Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the City of Satellite Beach. This is a meeting of the Community Redevelopment Agency. The date is September 13, 2012. The time is 6 p.m. I'd like to turn it over to Board Member Ed Kinberg.
All right, to the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Also, I'd like to ask Mr. Chair for a brief moment of silence and reflect on the losses our nation suffered in the Mideast this last few days.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great. Before we start, I would like to welcome you. There are some items on here that we'd like to get through first, like the budget. We're going to discuss the budget. And then I would like to tell the board and the members of the audience that, and I told Jeff and Lorraine, it's costing us a lot of money per hour. So we want to get the agenda items done with the most surety and quickly. I have looped some of them together so that we'll have discussion from the audience on a couple of them. Also, Jeff has informed me he's not involved in the facade grants, the site plans and stuff, so they will be excused. So they'll stay for the minutes if that's okay. Because John Stone does those, right, John? You're doing those. So and then they can head south. All right, with that in mind, that cost me a lot of money, I'm sorry. Let's go to 3, 4, A, and B, which should be the thing, which is the budget. Agenda item 3, 4, A, and B. Those are all linked together. Hi, guys. How are you?
Good. Hi there.
Hi, Jeff.
There's one thing I'd like to point out on the agenda on 4B, discussion and action on CRA budget. I believe that actually belongs under item 3.
Okay. So let's move that 4B to 3. So not 4A though, right?
Not 4A. Just
Okay.
4B.
So 4B becomes 3A.
Correct.
Yeah.
More or less, yes.
Okay, you guys got it.
We have before you a resolution to adopt your annual budget. There are 3 major changes in this from what was presented to the City Council previously. They were prepared in your backup, and anything that was changed was actually put in red. So
we don't have. I don't have anything in red.
Yeah, I didn't either.
Did you get you got black and white copies?
Got black and white copies.
Okay, well, I will tell you exactly where they are. And while explained in the cover memo as well, I will explain why they are different from what had been presented to you before. We had made the changes that the board had asked for at the last meeting. What you have, your first item on what's numbered at the bottom is page 77. Under the item sinking fund for debt payment, this changes from what was presented to the council, not what was presented to you last time. And there's $66,000 less in there than what was presented to the council. That's due to some minor changes made elsewhere. And the line item that some additional expenses were moved from was this line item. And I'll go through what those items were now. On the page number 75 at the bottom, which I believe is 2 pages, actually later, there are 3 numbers that vary. One is the line for consultant fees, which is the 3rd line down. The budget presented to the council did not have $20,000, which was included. That was the number that we wanted to make sure that was in there to cover the extension of our contract that was done at the end of the last meeting. You all had approved in a 3-month extension. That's where we put some money to make sure that that contract is covered. This is not new fees. This is not anticipating anything new. This is just to cover the contract extension you approved at your last meeting. There is another item down towards the end of their planning services, planner plan update if needed. The budget had moved to the City Council with $45,000. We had doubled that to $90,000. We had talked at your last meeting about making sure there's enough money to pay the contract we currently have to write the plan. And we had originally presented $90,000, and You said, why so much? We said, well, we're just covering the existing contract. You have a handful of dollars beyond that, maybe $5,000 or $6,000, in case something else comes up that you need to hire a consultant for planning services through the year. I don't know how that got reduced to 45, so we just kind of restored it to what you had seen in your last meeting. Then below that, on travel for business trips, the budget was adjusted down to $1,500. We had restored an additional $1,000 because we had not had any answer as of yet as to whether any of the board members wish to go to the CRA conference. If none of you wish to go to that conference, you can restore that back to $1,500 from $2,500.
Okay.
Those are the only changes that we have over what you asked for at the last meeting.
I do have a question regarding the memo that's before the actual budget. I remember correctly and very distinctly at the last CRA meeting, we requested that the budgets be separated. It was pretty clear that we wanted to separate even the auditing process, everything from the city function. And I saw some emails, in fact, there were a couple from me regarding, and if I remember correctly, we actually made a motion to separate the budget from the city's budget. And then it was my understanding that when the budget, before the budget went to the city council, because it's just kind of put into the budget, the CRA has to adopt the budget and the subject. The city council cannot adopt our budget. We have to adopt our budget. And it really was just a simple motion that was to be made by the city council approving putting that budget into the city's budget. And I would like to understand why all this ordinance issue is in here and why it became a big issue. Why, maybe it's a question for the interim city manager, because I don't understand why we would be required to do an ordinance, and if we were required to do an ordinance, why didn't the city present an ordinance at the last city council meeting? And I do apologize because I was missing, because it really affects this budget and the process that has happened.
Brenda, would you please address that? Or Jeff? Okay, if you've talked, that's fine.
There seemed to be a bunch of confusion about what needed to happen. We stand by if there was a simple motion made at the council, we would have been fine. There was some of the emails I know I kind of passed by me, although nothing was directed towards us, about ordinances. You have existing ordinances which created your CRA, none of which are particularly relevant to a separation of the budget. If we were to move forward with a separation of the budget, I do not believe there's any ordinance change that needs to be done. There's nothing contrary to statute. The statute merely says that both boards have to agree it separates.
But and I wasn't at the last meeting, but it's my understanding that the city council didn't agree to separate the budgets. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Well,
And then there was a bunch of hoopla after that about, well, you made a mistake and you didn't bring the ordinance forward to the city council. So I just want to understand what happened, where the breakdown was, and they don't represent the city council, they represent the CRA. So if something needs to go back to the city council at the next meeting to catch up to where we are and say, hey, we want these budgets separated, we need to do that. We can always present it in the city's budget, but it is always the responsibility of the CRA to approve their own budget.
We indicated all it takes is a motion at the council member. Somebody had told me that all it needs even is for the city to send a letter that says, of course I wouldn't ask you to do that without having the council take a vote on it. But there's nothing that requires an ordinance. Your own ordinances are silent to how the budget is done. All it says, all your enabling ordinances say is that the CRA board will adopt the budget.
Okay, but we have this, are you?
That's counter to what was said in the council meeting. Mm-hmm. In the council meeting, I understood, correct me if I'm wrong, but I understood that we were required, council was required to pass an ordinance to separate the CRA budget from the city budget, and we had not done that.
And that is correct. It's correct from Mr. Beadle. And Brenda, I think you should address that because you've talked with the Department of Revenue attorney and so on, and they have given their opinion that it had to be a process of legal notice, the first reading, second reading, and then notice to the county as far as that was concerned. And that information, let's let Brenda talk if you don't mind.
Well, that's why I would like an explanation.
Hi, Brenda.
Okay, under dependent special districts,
I can't hear Brenda, can you?
after I had emailed Richard and Lorraine back in on August 10th, I had felt uncomfortable excluding everything from the trim requirements. So I had contacted DOR for our requirements for trim, and I did not want to retrim because it's very expensive to the city. So I did quite a lot of research. And I went through the Florida statutes that was provided by Jeff, thank you very much, which we were not privy to when we had established the CRA under our sections 163. But under all of the different sections, when we have the 189 dependent special districts, 189.4041, it states a charter for the creation of a dependent special district created after September 30th, 1989 shall be adopted only by ordinance of the county or municipality. Dependent special district created by a county or municipality shall be created by adoption of an ordinance that includes, and then it goes down, and the applicable financial disclosure, noticing, and reporting of reporting requirements. And it goes down about all these different things. Modification of community redevelopment plans in section 163.362. If at any time after the approval of a community redevelopment plan by the governing body, it becomes necessary or desirable to amend or modify such plan, which we have, the governing body may amend such plan upon the recommendation of the agency, which the agency wants to do. The governing body shall hold a public hearing on a proposed modification of
Can we stop for a second, please? We're talking about the budget.
After the public notice thereof, by publication in a newspaper having a general circulation in the area of operation of the agency. Then you go to section 163.346, notice of taxing authorities. Before the governing body adopts any resolution or enacts any ordinance under section 163.356 or section 163.357, which we had established our CRA under, or amends any community redevelopment plan, the governing body must provide public notice of such proposed action pursuant to, and then it goes on, and at least 15 days prior to such proposed action, mailed by registered mail a notice to each taxing authority which levies the ad valorem taxes, which we are one of them and Broward County is the other. So, I mean, I could go on, and then it says procedures for adoption of ordinance and resolutions. The ordinance is the official legislation action of the governing body. A resolution, the incident's expression of a governing body, and it's a temporary character. So I could go on and on. Then I got an official notice right from Letitia Blick from TRIM saying that it must, for our TRIM purposes, this must be incorporated in our budget for TRIM purposes, because we did not have enough time for City Council to separate and give proper notice to have them separated for this fiscal year. Your resolution that you're going to vote on tonight is correct for 1213, but it still must be included in the city's budget for this trim purpose. For this year, must be included for trim purposes only. That's it, just for this year, just for trim. So we do not have to trim for the city. That's all.
Well, I am very familiar with Florida Statute 163 and Florida Statute 189, and I just don't like to see our consultant thrown under the bus for no reason, when all it would have taken last week was a simple motion by the City Council to separate the budget. And that's all it would have taken, and I still don't agree that we need an ordinance. You have referenced all kinds of ordinances for creating a CRA, amending the plan. Jeff, do you want to clarify?
Yeah, there's nothing in your plan about budgeting. It's an administrative function that's not ruled by your ordinances.
comprehensive plan. I have the plan document.
Your ordinance specifically says in the title that it provides for officers of the Community Redevelopment Agency, rules of procedure sessions, open meetings, agency duration, and an agency budget. And then what your statutes, what your ordinance says,
Page 18.
says agency annual budget, A, consistent with section 163-387 Florida statutes, the Community Redevelopment Agency shall each year adopt a fiscal year budget.
Right, that's
And then
not it.
B, the second part includes a section that was imposed upon you by the county and their delegation saying that you can't spend more than 25% of your annual budget on administration. It doesn't say,
Oh, my goodness.
where does it
gracious.
say where you go about budget? All it says is the redevelopment agency shall each year adopt a fiscal year budget.
But that's where I got all my information from.
Okay, but
Brenda, may I?
That we
This
must
is-
comply with all of the requirements
and
of noticing and all the other information. And that's what I'm following. And then I got this right from Trim saying that it must be incorporated for the notices. That's all, and I'm saying that the information that you have in there, they can adopt.
there's no problem with your budget adoption. This is just a matter of whether you could have done something that didn't happen.
Both of these are correct. I'm not throwing him under the bus. I'm just.
Ms. Samuelson, you said Mr. Beadle was involved. Where's his opinion?
I had asked Mr. Beadle about when you create an entity.
I'm not saying that you threw him under the bus. I've seen emails where there's been accusations that they did not bring the ordinance forward last Wednesday before the budget was adopted.
That was actually said in the meeting.
Okay, well, maybe I listened to the minutes, and
No, I said that was said in the meeting.
I went back to
There was some confusion, and when Brenda talked with the Department of Revenue attorney, and they had a conference call on this, she was advised to do it this way, and that they told her the proper process to do it. I think that we would be remiss arguing with the Department of Revenue. It's not that you can't have a separate budget, but for this year, this has to be included in the city budget as it comes on the 5th and on the 19th for proper process. We have to go through the proper process, and according to Beadle, you create something via ordinance, it must be modified via ordinance. That was the general consensus, and that makes a lot of sense.
Well, why didn't you generate
this is
the-
not a big deal.
Well, apparently it is, because
No,
there's
it
been
is
a lot of
not.
emails circulate around this community about it.
We have to make sure to operate in the best interests of the city. That's the
Okay,
job
well,
that we're required to do.
Again, this kind of boils down to lack of CRA experience, not only with the executive director, but now we've hired professional staff, and our staff is questioning the executive staff that we hired that have oodles of experience. And
Well, there was a
again, I
problem
wasn't at
here.
the meeting because my son was injured, but I think that some of the responses that are taken were you just regurgitated Florida Statute 163 and regarding overlay districts, and none of it made any sense to me. It could have been done very simply instead of all this he said, she said, nay say. We're trying to move the CRA forward, and I just don't like when I see things like that. We've come a long way.
I think the sensitivity, I don't think anybody was trying to throw anybody under the bus last meeting. I think the sensitivity that was on council anyway was the fact that we were being asked to approve a budget that had part of it never been approved by the CRA.
Exactly, that's the wrong way to do it.
And so that was kind of the sensitivity here. And then it was said, well, the reason that happened was because we never got around to putting together the ordinance to split the budget.
But then it was blamed on the consultant
No,
who
it was not.
I have the email, I'll send it to you.
No, the issue is that we had to make certain that this is done properly, or we could be in trouble.
I'm not sure it is.
And when the Department of Revenue talks with our finance director and instructs her a particular way, I'm sorry, and there's no malice intended to our consultants, but I have to follow that line, otherwise we're looking at super big trouble, and I can't afford to put the city in that. The issue is you're still able to do your resolution tonight. You're still able to talk about the budget and the proper allocation that this board so chooses, but we have to make sure we are not going to have to retrim, and we had to do this in the proper order, and I stand by that. Brenda followed through on this. There's no malice intended toward anybody anybody else. The issue is what's right for the city, what's right for the residents, and to do it right, and this is the way we believe to do it right,
I
Cheryl. I'm
completely
sorry.
understand. I would like to do it right, but we also thought that transferring funds to pay for police and fire was correct for the
Okay, well,
next
that's,
time, too.
okay.
So let's move on, but-
We are here, we're talking 12, 13
I understand, but
budget.
there is I wanted to discuss this memo that again says that we need to do an ordinance. I don't believe the ordinance is necessary.
Okay, well, one, we have a resolution in front of us to incorporate this budget into the 19 September meeting. So let's discuss the budget
Okay.
first, and then we'll come back to that. Is that okay? Let's discuss the budget. Are there any questions on the budget, on the input?
Yes.
Okay, let's do that. Let's get down to,
Down to the meat boards.
Yeah, because line numbers, where we get into the projects that we're going to be spending money on.
Can you refer to the
Yeah,
page number,
I'm
Mr.
looking.
Billman?
I guess it would be 77 capital outlay.
No, I think it's almost 4B.
Yeah, and that's actually that's 3A, which used to be 4B, but that's part of the budget. So we're putting basically 179, 185, about 500 grand, $502,177 towards 2 projects in that capital outlay.
Or-
What are you getting up for?
I'm sorry, 3 beach improvements.
Right.
Okay, but a beach improvement project,
right?
3 of them. Okay, here's my point. We're putting 500 grand towards things that have nothing to do
My mistake.
with the original reason for the CRA to be stood up, which is non-conforming lots. When are we going to get around to fixing the original reason for the CRA to be stood up 10 years ago, which are non-conforming lots? I think that $502,177 should not be put towards new projects. It should be put towards projects that take care of the original reason for the CRA.
Can we just go back before you talk about the 179.5 is from the DOT.
Right.
You can't do anything with that. So
Okay. Then the 322,000. My point is we keep spending money in the CRA, and we never, ever spend money to take care of the original reason that the CRA was stood up. That's my point. When are we going to get around to doing that?
We're actually having a meeting on the 17th for the PZAB talking about non-conforming docks.
What does that have to do with the CRA?
And we're also moving forward.
Docks. She said
And
docks.
we're also moving forward with other nonconformities that John has been working with Rob.
Sorry, Ann, did you say docks or lots?
Docks.
Non-conforming docks.
Docks. And we're also,
How many
we're talking
non-conforming docks do we have on the CRA?
probably not too many, but I'm saying, dealing with nonconformities, the dock issue is going to be dealt with, and John is working, my second part of that is John and Rob have been working diligently to identify nonconformities. And John, maybe you just want to step up and just see how you are on that process. But those also would occur within the CRA.
Okay.
I don't think that's the issue that
The issue
Board
of the
Member Gilman's addressing.
non-conforming
I have the
lots.
same concern you did, Greg. Board Member Gilman, whoever you, Gilman, I like that one.
I've been called worse here tonight.
I had the same concern too, and I looked at the drawings for the beach improvements, and I looked at the cost. Those things are in the CRA, but they don't solve, I mean, unless you think having a publicly owned lot that's not improved into a parking lot or an attractive park is a correction of a non-conforming lot. That's really not within the CRA budget. I'm not really leaning towards approving those. I know we've got a weird overlap here between the city and everything else, and it kind of bugs me because really if the city had all this money instead of the CRA, they could do that on their own. And that's a city improvement. And then also, we don't have any idea what the maintenance is. We're talking about laying down curbs, sidewalks, painting, stuff, you know.
I just want to fix the original
Just
issue.
continuing costs that somebody's incurring. I'm very reluctant, especially without knowing the continuing costs, but also according with what Board Member Billman said was,
I think at the
what does
last,
that do for the CRA?
I think at the last meeting, we kind of directed them, we had to put it into a project, correct? You have to put the money into a project, and I think we directed them to put it into the beach accesses.
Yes, Mr. Chair, the board did direct us to put in the beach access.
That's correct.
city staff, your executive director had identified these particular locations to move forward with. What I
I
can
don't-
tell you, as far as the non-conforming lots, is you had indicated at your last meeting that is
We're
your
putting it in
number
the
one
plan.
priority. We are including that in your plan as a number one priority, and we will have some strategies on how to address that. I don't believe at the current time you really have strategies in your plan to address those issues.
No.
Wasn't that 352 money that would receive back to the taxing authorities if we didn't spend it?
If you
And that's what we
chose,
decided, that's what we talked about, leaving it for the beach access?
it would be one of three things you'd have to do with, or four things you'd have to do with it. Return it to where it came from, put it into a sinking fund for debt, use it to pay off debt, or roll it into a project that's going to happen in the next 3 years.
I was going to
Well,
say,
we
we
can't
could,
do 2 and 3, we can't roll it into debt because we can't pay off the debt.
right, but we can put it in the sinking fund. That's my point.
I would like to talk about the sinking fund. How did we go from 41,000 to 412,000 into the sinking fund?
Just-
I like it.
We'll get into that too. Before we get into that, one more thing on this thing. No, I forgot what I was going to say. Interrupted you. Threw you off track. I forgot what I was going to say. We can't do 2 or 3 unless we want to just lock it up, and then it has to be paid debt sometime in the future. Is that right? If it's in the sinking fund, it has to be applied to the debt, and we don't know if we'll ever be able to apply it to the debt because until we get to the last payment. So, my inclination is to let the money recede back to the taxing authorities, to be honest about it, and let them use the money as they best see fit. And one of the problems that's hamstrung Satellite Beach and really caused a lot of our issues in the city with maintaining services is that we basically, by creating the CRA, pulled about $1 million a year of revenue away, or $500,000 away from the city. And if we hadn't pulled all that money away from the city would be able to fund all the services at the levels it's been traditionally providing. I know this isn't all city money, some of this is county money.
I was going to say, it'd only be a percentage of that.
I know, but I'd rather see it recede back to the taxing authorities than make an improvement that people are going to drive by and say, that's what we kept the CRA for, was down Prettier Beach?
But from the council perspective, I think we did that. We are maintaining services at the same levels that they've always been maintained and cutting the tax rate. So I think
No, I
that
understand
part's
that.
taken care of.
But that wouldn't have been an issue if this money hadn't been pulled
But
out of the city budget.
I'm glad it wasn't, because I'm glad it was an issue, because it made us be more efficient. Sometimes you're forced into efficiencies, and it's been a wonderful, wonderful thing. But I think, since we can't pay down the debt, and I hope everybody understands what we're talking about up here, the people in the past who negotiated the CRA debt instrument negotiated an agreement that if we attempt to pay down our debt early, there's a massive prepayment penalty on that. I'm sure none of us would take out mortgages on our house like that, but that's what has happened in this city. So we can't pay off the debt without massive prepayment problems. So what these folks have designed, which is fairly ingenious, I think, is this sinking fund that we put debt payments into, not pay off the debt, but wait till that sinking fund matches our debt payoff so we can do it down the road. So I think the next best thing to paying off the debt or paying down the debt is to take that money and put it into the sinking fund.
And the
But
sinking fund never goes away.
you know what, we discussed this ad nauseum at the last meeting, and we agreed to split the money, put part of it into the sinking fund. We had $41,000 in there before, and now all of a sudden there's $500,000 in that sinking fund, which means we're going to be paying about $500,000 back for the loans and the principal, and $500,000 tied up in the sinking fund. That leaves no money left for infrastructure in this community. And if that is the will of the CRA, then make a motion and let's do it. But if it's not, and you want to see some money invested back into infrastructure, like sidewalks on A1A and other projects, then we need to move forward and stop talking about just paying down this debt. And I've already requested that the abolishment of the CRA go to the city council for a motion, but it hasn't been done yet.
Well, but we already talked about that. We can't because they
You don't know
have to
that, you don't know yet because they can't seem to get the loan documents from anybody that are executed. So we're not there yet. The documents that they have regarding the swap agreement are not executed. So we're not even sure what the swap agreement really says. So
You lost me.
I'm just,
You have another item.
we have
that's about
another
the swap
item. We're
agreement,
really
so
kind
we
of
can talk
jumping,
about
the
that.
budget really should be at the end of the agenda because there's so many items in the front of the agenda that affect it.
That's not Ms. Warren.
What else?
But you know what, if you would like to make a motion to put the 32267, send it back to the taxing authority, make the motion and see what happens.
Well,
I'd like to hear what everyone else has to say about it.
yeah,
It's my inclination, but that's not my decision until we
what would be
So we
different
have a
than
good
putting
discussion
it,
about it.
I know the sinking fund that goes into the debt, but what about just the reserve contingency fund? And then you, as the year goes on, can you develop projects that you want?
And well, actually, to be honest, in our first budget, it was in originally the first budget that we were provided.
Yeah.
It said reserves, community development to repay debt or for projects. So you're not just tying it back to repay the debt, but it's also there for projects if you want it. And then all of a sudden, during the second budget, or during our budget, they added the sinking fund, which is $41,609.5, which would tie it up. You can't use it for anything else, so you're not tying all that money up. And then, of course, the budget where I wasn't here last week, now it's back to sinking fund for future debt payment, $500,000. So I'm not sure what's happening here, but it's very inconsistent.
Even though, I know, you weren't at the council meeting, but we did not discuss this. So that,
But it was still approved on first this budget on first reading.
well,
So
Yes,
something's
because
going
of
on
today.
here that I'm not aware
Okay,
about, because
okay.
it was never the intention of this board at the last meeting to put all the money in the sinking fund.
no.
Am I right?
That's my recollection.
That's
I was-
his recollection.
I was surprised to see that big sinking fund number
What's
also.
going on with that?
I was happy.
You all had identified to move some additional split money, and then Brenda, if you help me with this one, Brenda had identified that there's money from DOT that's going to come to you in the next budget year. So that was that $179,500. So that then, after the first budget, that was found and that needed to be budgeted for, that was all put into the sinking fund. But that's how that number raised so quickly.
And the DOT has given us money for landscaping?
It's for the
South Patrick.
Drive improvement.
Right.
So we're going to take what they give us to put in the sinking fund and not back into the CRA. I mean, I understand.
Anywhere tonight. You can move that anywhere.
Okay, but we opted in here to put it into the sinking fund.
Correct.
I'm totally losing track of the numbers.
South Carolina
That's
Outlet.
for me. Did we have 179.5 in there originally, before we got the DOT money on the South
You had an
Patrick Group?
expenditure, you didn't have a revenue.
Right.
Okay. And then we got 179.5 from the DOT in the meantime, in the last 4
Well,
weeks?
that was found to, if I'm not mistaken, and Brenda, you have to tell me, that was found that will be coming in the next budget year, so it was included as a revenue. And that discovery happened since that last
A
meeting,
revenue for who?
to the CRA from DOT,
So why the DOT is giving us that money for,
Landscaping.
and offsets the costs of the 179.5 for South
okay,
Patrick.
but we had nothing in there before, right?
You didn't have the revenue for that.
So how can we put that in the sinking fund?
Because it just identifies, it frees up money that would have gone to that, so then you have extra money just to slice and stuff.
Okay, so this,
And that's what I'm saying. You can move that anywhere this board would like.
Who made the
$179,500
decision to move all this money
additional
into the sinking fund? Because it was pretty clear to me that that wasn't direction of this board at the last meeting.
Well, I don't remember that.
I know it was yours, but in general, it was not.
Consider it as a placeholder. It's just,
This-
other than putting it just on a blank line.
The sinking fund is not a placeholder. Would you be kind enough to explain what a sinking fund is again?
It's a savings account to pay off debt.
Right,
But
And
only
by
can you use
statute,
the
once you
camp.
put it there, that's the only purpose it can be used for.
right, which is a good thing.
So you
Has
can,
not approved that yet.
the board has not approved that. You can choose to leave it in that line. You can come up with another project to put it into. You can put it into the undesignated line for next year and then allocate it as you wish during the year. You can have it there in case a project comes up and at the end of the year, put it in the sinking fund. You
Well,
have
I just
tremendous
think
option.
with a new plan being developed in November, to put $500,000 in a sinking fund that can only be used to pay off future debt is ridiculous.
what does the sinking fund recover on interest?
Current debt, not future debt. That's debt we now have.
Current debt.
$5 million.
Current debt.
No, I know, but it's really, we can't pay it though, Greg. We can't pay it until the last year or two, so we got like 12 or 13
But does that
years.
mean that you don't save money at home? Because you can't, of course, you save money at home to pay down your mortgage. I mean, you put it into an account. You can't pay off your mortgage all at once.
We're having the same basic argument over and over and over again. At the last meeting, there was $41,000 in this sinking fund. We hashed it out, and I think it was you, Ed, who talked about not tying up that money because you
I think it was
put
me.
all of it in there. We agreed not to. And yet here it is again, all of it tied up in the sinking fund.
I don't know how it got in there, but I'm glad it's there.
Well, I like the suggestion that our administrators just had, is at a minimum, if this is next year's revenue, not last year's revenue, right? Is that the full amount, 440,
Next year's.
whatever that was?
Well, I mean,
412, is that the full amount, the 412 that's kind of running around loose? Okay, so I'd rather have that in a reserve fund,
Aye.
because we may have projects coming up during the next year to help correct these non-conforming lots, and that's what the money's for.
We're already paying back the debt by,
Yeah, principal and interest.
by this line. Okay, principal and interest. All right. the value of money, the value of money now, okay, is more valuable than money in the future. So even if we did save up, several $1 million over the next few years and have enough to pay off our debt early,
if the interest conditions turn favorable to allow us to pay it off. I mean, it's possible we could end up with a couple of $1 million, the way we're headed, into a sinking fund that we can't use to pay off the debt because the numbers never turn around on us.
right.
Right. So all we could use that sinking fund for would be to pay a big prepayment penalty. And
But
that-
we can take this money and put it into sort of a savings account.
Reserves.
Into reserves
You
so
can
that.
put it where it
if
was
we
to begin with.
Did 3 years of reserve savings, then perhaps we could apply those funds to some initiative that fixes a part of our non-conforming loan.
In the first budget, our very first
Yeah, it's like
budget,
3
it
years,
was
but,
reserves
yeah.
to repay debt or towards projects, $481,000.
Yeah, I think why that got changed, though, Cheryl, is because it was determined after that is when the light bulb came on that we had this huge prepayment penalty.
Yeah.
So they said, well, we can't put it in the reserves because we can't use it for prepayment because we're not going to take
That's what we
we're not going to take the big
yeah.
hit. So that's when they came up with the sinking
And
fund.
then
the
all
other
of
way
a sudden,
around.
and then all of a
So
sudden it
that's-
went from 41 because to 400. That's insane.
See, one of the problems we have is we have no idea what cost is attached to our fundamental goal of fixing the non-conforming lots. Like I mentioned a concept, I don't know if we'll ever do it, but if some lot can't be effectively used because the drainage is too big, the above-ground drainage, but they can use underground drainage, cover drainage to fill it up and then make the lot useful, that might be a good investment for the CRAs to help pay that excess cost. But that could be a couple $100,000. If we tie up all of our money in the sinking fund and somebody comes up with a proposal next year to use the old bowling alley lot, but they need underground storage to make it cost-effective on their model, we don't have the cash.
Okay, you talked me into it, but here's my stipulation, that money go into reserve fund and only be used to fix the original problem that started the CRA.
Well, I don't have a problem with that, Cliff.
Then we're spending money right now.
No, because we don't have the plan yet. And when you see the plan, the final plan, you might realize there's other things that the CRA wants to spend money on. And I'm tired of the caveats. Even when the city decided to pay the CRA back to $35,000, Mr. French made a motion to immediately put it into the fund to pay back the debt. I mean, that you are two votes. You need to make, you need to listen to what some of the other council people want, and you always and what the other CRA members want.
It all
we
comes
don't
down
have
to a vote.
plan yet.
It
so
all
let's
comes
make
down to a vote. All comes down to a vote.
Let's make a vote. Let's have
let's
make a motion.
let's go over the budget a little bit first. So, what do we have available in reality to spend? I mean, let's just talk plain English and get out of these numbers a little bit. We got an income of $1.5 million. Is that right?
1.8.
That's what we got. 1.8. I'm sorry, I keep looking at the first column. We got $1.8 million to play around with.
Right.
We got 464 that we know what that has to go to, right? 465. That has to go to debt, right? Mm-hmm. So we still got $1.3 million to play with. Is that right? Mm-hmm. And I'm not using the word play in the toy sense. To work with. So we got $1.3 million. And then we flip back up to this isn't all on this one page. So we have to flip back to another page. We have an operating budget. It's 265. That's going to be our CRA director, our CRA staff person, clerk or whatever, it might be Lenora, and whatever services we hire from the city, right? Is that operating? That's correct. Okay. And then we got the debt service. We already talked about that. Then what is the 502 capital outlay? Is that the
That's all you're spending on projects here.
That's all we're spending on projects.
179 from the
But that's
DOT.
really only 322 of our money. It's really only 322 of our money.
Mm-hmm.
So really technically for that line to read correctly, it's 322 of our money, and 179 that really is not part of our budget. It's just kind of a gift, okay? So we were down at $1.8 million minus $500,000 for debt, minus another $250,000 for staff. $500,000 for debt, my $750,000, and then we've got capital outlay. So we got about $1 million. So we got about $800,000 left over. Is that right? Am I doing this wrong?
700.
800,000 roughly. That we're really talking about figuring out where to put. 700 to 800, I know I can't,
So there's
okay. So,
167, well, 167 in reserves, contingency, and then 412 that's going to be put in the sinking fund. So out of $1 million, out of 700,000, you're putting 322 back into infrastructure in this community for a year.
yeah,
I think it's a disservice to the
out of
community.
$700,000 or $800,000 that we have to work with after we pay for our staff costs. So the question to me is what's the effective distribution of that $700,000+, if I've got my numbers correct? Are those numbers, is that the right ballpark number?
Yeah, it's better.
700,000 roughly? Because right now, out of that $700,000, we're putting 500,000 of that away for a purpose that could never be used for anything unless we're lucky and the interest rates turn around on us. We've got a guaranteed stream of income that's going to cover our debt payments plus our administrative budget, and we're stuck with the CRA. We can't close it down. So realistically, how do we maximize the use of the money? And my thinking is that we hold it. Not a big fan of these beachfront projects. I just don't think it's a good investment, especially in hard times like this, to be printing up stuff. But we need to keep the bulk of that money in a reserve to use, especially when we don't know what the cost of fixing up our non-conforming lots are going to be this year. At the end of the year, if we get to the end of the year and we still got $600,000 we never spent, then it might be appropriate to flip it into the sinking fund, and we could do that, correct?
Correct.
But to put it in now ties it up. But we also need some loose cash for projects like, and I don't know, I'm having second.
We don't know yet. We don't have a
I'm
plan.
having second thoughts about all these facade grants. I don't know. One of them, some of them I'm in favor of, some of them I'm not. But we need some loose money and to be able to accomplish special things that come up or special opportunities that come up. And we can't tie up the bulk of our wealth and stuff like that. And like Lloyd mentioned, the value of money drops down over time. So our $400,000 in the sinking fund is $380,000 next year. It's $360,000 the next year. I didn't calculate it out, but it drops off.
Not if we have it in an interest-bearing account of some decent reputation. I mean, that's the whole idea behind having a sinking fund, right, is to put it into an interest-bearing account?
Yes.
Yeah. Any interest-bearing accounts, in the United States, will get more than 1 or 2%.
I'll tell you, we
And
should,
there's one other thing I want to mention too. If I remember correctly, and I don't remember, it was either January or February, as part of our comprehensive plan, we adopted a capital improvement plan. It was not the best plan, but I think it also included CRA funding for sidewalks along the west side of A1A. So we might actually be committed to put some money into that because of that. We adopted as part of the comprehensive plan. Even though the comp plan amendment didn't come through,
That's a city plan, though. That's not a CRA plan.
it designated CRA funds.
They can't tell us what to do.
No.
They can designate CRA funds. We don't have to provide them.
I think
They can't even designate CRA funds. They can request them.
I like what each of you are saying. I think we need to get some public comment, but what I hear,
Good idea, Joe.
and what I like what you're hearing, Ed, and what is the sinking fund may be too traumatic, but the reserve fund may be about right. And then as you start to meet,
Well,
you can.
I agree with that idea, but we do have to put a good chunk into the sinking fund.
Well, and I'm willing to, after public comment, consider a motion that would say 80% of what's ever in the reserve fund has to go to code correction, and 20% can go to other projects.
One more thing.
So that still is over 100 grand open.
We could still put money into the sinking fund, all right, because one year you identify money into the sinking fund, all right, and then the next year you pull the money from the sinking fund to pay the principal and interest of the next year, okay, to pay the top line, and that way you continuously flow that money through the sinking fund into paying the principal and interest, all right? So if you need that, okay, it'll be there. You'll always have that extra money from year to year.
I just think it's another accounting process step you don't really need. I mean, and also to your tying it up if projects come up. And I think it's really a disservice to the charrettes that had happened and the stakeholder interviews, because we haven't even seen the plan yet, but we're already taking that money away from this new plan that we committed to. This CRA board committed to a new plan, quite a nice amount of money, and we haven't even seen it yet. And we're socking the money away into a sinking fund, and only doing $300,000 worth of improvements next year.
You suggested it's public
Yeah,
comment.
I do. And Lorraine,
That's a good
the top two items that came out of this board were, that you did your survey on. was-
Non-conforming uses was number one.
And pay down
Number two
debt.
was pay down the debt.
Okay,
It takes care of both of those.
I think we're okay. I mean,
I agree. Now it's just a matter of amount. Now it's just a matter
how
of
we're going to do
And
this.
one other thing while we're going through the budget, you also left out some other things that were in there, including engineering services. I mean, you can't get anything done without other kinds of services, such as surveying, engineering. That was taken out of the budget from the last CRA meeting to this CRA meeting, and I'm really concerned about that.
That was Mr. Chairman, that was a discussion the board had, that those services had been undertaken and/or in the future, they should be in the project line item rather than under
Okay.
professional services. Because if they're identifiable to a specific project, it's more appropriate to budget them into the project line item.
And may I note, too, there is no facade grant program as of October 1st. So that's the $100,000 that is now, has been put into other expenditures in the CRA, because the facade program as of October 1st has been abolished.
Correct. Is there money in here, I heard, in the operating for an administrative position?
Yes, there is.
Is that lumped into operating? Because I thought that we had designated like 20K for that, but I haven't seen that. Or
Yes,
is
that's actually on top of page 75, the very first line.
Okay, you
salaries,
say
wages,
that,
and benefits.
the reason I say that, on the next page, you have salaries, wages, and benefits on 74, and it only says CRA manager.
Page 74.
And on page 74, where it describes what the 80, it only says CRA manager, so I wanted to make sure that that's CRA staff?
The other support kind of hangs around it's still sitting in the second line, the miscellaneous hourly services to the city.
That's page 74.
It stayed there,
Okay,
the idea being that if you were going to pay for somebody else, then you just move money out of
Okay, sorry.
that line, because that's where it was budgeted in.
They used to have $100,000 for the city manager, or the CRA manager, and we pulled that down to 85 as a cap,
Then it's 17.
and 17 was for,
Miss-
and I think we're free to move that around as long as it's for the same basic purpose.
Yes.
So we could hire our own clerk if we wanted to,
Correct.
Just
on
for
that
the-
miscellaneous hourly.
The thought being that you wouldn't hire somebody at more on an hourly rate than you would pay the city to undertake that service for you.
Yeah.
I'd like to open up the CRA budget and discussion action on CRA budget capital outlay, which was 4B, now 3A. 3 minutes, please. Ron? You're on.
Ron Dragutis, resident in the neighborhood.
Is that a TV show?
It will be.
Sounds like one.
It will be.
Go ahead, Ron. I'm sorry.
You know, when my neighbors hear this discussion in the neighborhood, they're going to say, at least there is a discussion. First of all, the $179,000, was that check cut directly to the CRA?
Not sure it's even here yet.
From DOT, you mean?
Yes, correct.
A check on.
That's just a
It hasn't
promise.
come in yet. It hasn't come in yet.
Is that dedicated to the CRA, or is that coming to the city's general fund?
Shows it here coming to the CRA.
Come to the CRA, doesn't it,
According to
Brenda?
this, it comes to
Yeah.
CRA. Is that true, Brendan?
I think, I don't mean to interrupt, talk his 3 minutes over. Don't we have to have an agreement with
There
the,
would be an agreement for that.
We
I
don't
don't know
have-
who
we
the
don't have an agreement with
beneficiary
DOT.
is. It's not an unusual circumstance for a city to enter into an agreement with an understanding with the CRA that the money just passes through the city.
Right.
DOT tends to prefer to have an agreement with the city.
And they do.
And then there's just an understanding, whether it's an MOU or something else, that money's passing
we
through
don't
the
have an
CRA.
MOU, I'm sure.
That the
That
city
money
just
is
passed it.
designated for landscape improvements on South Patrick, so that's the only purpose it can be used for.
Correct.
Correct. Okay. Ron?
Then why is the CRA having to be burdened just of receiving this money, because ultimately the CRA will be burdened to maintain that? And that's something to think about.
can the CRA move that money somewhere else if they don't spend it all? That's the question.
No, you have to give it back to the DOT.
Then I'm going to stop there with that issue, and that's something that needs to be thought about. And this whole budget process, I feel as somebody in the neighborhood that this is being rammed down our throats. We should have had workshops on this. And I understand where one of the board members talks about playing with money. I get the euphemism. But this is hard-earned money. And we've been around the block with the past. What about some reserves to maintain Pelican Park instead of ending up 20 years from now with the same problem, where we don't have the money, we have to form a CRA and continue it, and not have some contingency reserve buildup over the next several years so bathrooms can be upkept, walkovers can be maintained properly so people don't fall through them. Have we thought about that yet?
Costs us $7,000 to do it.
And there is some value to having a reserve, a sinking fund. I'm not sure I agree with the amount in there right now, but there should be some reserve put away for the debt, because you could build an annuity in so many years and maybe structure it over 5 to 7 years where you build an annuity in there to where it'll grow eventually, and the following remaining 8 years you won't have to pay the debt and there will be extra money. And I'm not saying it should be $500,000 this year, maybe it should be a little less. And then I have another problem. March 27th, 2008, the Community Redevelopment Agency Advisory Committee came up with a resolution with grant monies, and maybe Mr. John Fergus can fill you in on this, where monies were committed to the A1A streetscaping. I don't know if this grant money is available, but it was discussed as a capital improvement item, I believe in January or February, and the former city manager provided a schedule in that was passed, and I fought that. I did not like that going through at that point, but the documentation was provided to me as far as the resolution from the advisory board. So I don't know where we stand right now, whether it was brought to anybody's attention that this money perhaps already is committed. And some of these projects on the beach, Magellan, which is up the street from me. You know, it really does not look good when you've got expensive homes there, or homes that should increase in value, yet are decreasing value for various reasons. The place is going down over there. It's about time it be replaced. I don't know, at least paving. Somebody's got to go out there and look at that.
Ron?
Thank you.
You got about 5 minutes. Thank you. You're welcome. Other public comment? I thank you for your comments. All right, let's bring it back, please, and let's discuss the budget.
Well, I think that all of our commercial on A1A and South Patrick Drive is in the CRA, and I'm going to say it again, it's a disservice to this community to tie up almost $500,000 into a sinking fund when there's going to be a necessity to, as Ron said, maintain Pelican Park and other things, and I think that the majority of that money needs to be put into a reserve for future projects and or to repay the debt, but not completely committed to pay down the debt.
How long
or to
can
put
we
in the
keep it in
sinking
reserve?
fund.
Is maintenance of the park a city or a CRA
End of
function?
fiscal year.
It's just 1 year. The question was, how long can you keep it in reserve contingency? And the answer is end of fiscal year.
Okay. Again, the statute says at the end of on the last day of the fiscal year, any money left over in the trust fund, which is where you store your money, goes to one of 4 things. It goes to pay down debt. It goes into a sinking fund to pay down debt. It goes back to where it came from, or it goes into a project that's going to happen within 3 years.
Okay, so
on September 30th, you have those 4 choices with the
You
money.
can move it into the sinking fund and then use it the following years. to pay your principal and interest payment.
But I just don't agree with tying it up if there's other.
I don't either.
I don't.
Well, we put it in reserve.
Ed, I think you made a good comment and a good motion. I think we're just discussing where we're going to put it, but I think you have, do you want to say something, anything? I think you have a good plan, and I think everybody's kind of agreeable to it. Even, I don't mean to single out Cheryl or Greg, but I mean, I think that the reserve is what we want to do.
I think so.
Sinking, a little tricky.
I would like to put a little bit into the sinking, a lot into the reserve.
What are the numbers you're thinking, Greg?
I would put 0 into the sinking right now. Now hear me out. Put 0 into the sinking right now. Put it all into reserves. All right, at the end of the year, if we don't use the money, all right, in the reserves, one of 4 things happens. We pick to move it into the sinking fund, and then we use that money the next year to make the principal and interest payment, all right, on next year's debt payment.
I like that idea, Lloyd, but I don't know if
But then you've got the full amount available for the whole fiscal year.
maybe kind of a stupidly symbolic thing to me.
Yeah.
But I think we do need to make some progress. And basically what we're doing is saving up for the last year of the loan so that we, instead of the last year of the loan. And I think the citizens would like to see some progress on, or acknowledgement that you need to put away some money to pay future debts, but not so much that you hurt your ability to operate your business.
Make something, make a motion, Ed.
So,
41,000 and everything.
how much money, can you give me 100?
100.
I'll give you 40.
100.
40. What do we have, what's the total dollar we have to work with to leave in reserves? I've only got an approximate somewhere in the neighborhood of 700, which is
Probably, 579.
Yeah, 580.
579?
580.
I mean, if it's just those 2 items.
Okay, so about 579, I would say we put 500 in reserve and let 79 go to the sinking fund. Does that sound like you guys? I just like even round numbers. 500 sounds good to me. And that's a good, I shouldn't just say it sounds good to me, it's not my fault. Think motion.
Are you going to put caveats on there like you were saying earlier about a percentage?
Yeah, I might change, you're right, I forgot about that. I might change my numbers a little bit then.
No, I'd say keep those numbers, but put those caveats on it.
What caveats? Because we're waiting for this plan to come out, which the number one priority is to fix the non-conforming lot.
We've got 579, so what my motion would be is I would have 579.
580, I didn't carry over.
Let's see, 50, what's 15% of 579? Oh, that's about 70, isn't it?
It's 58 plus 27.
So out of the 579, because we don't know what the exact number is going to be, I'm going to say whatever that cash, loose cash is, and I understand your concern about the phrase "play with money," Ron. It's not the best phrase. So, but out of the 579, we're going to put away 15% towards the future debt payment and go into the sinking fund.
Okay, I don't even think the council does that too in their reserve funds too.
And then, so that's 15%, so that gives us 85%. And then I'd like to put, the remaining 85% goes into the reserve, which is $500,000, roughly, and I'd like to designate 85% of that, the leftover money. So we're changing, that's why it adds up. We'd like to dedicate 85% of what goes into the reserve fund to accomplishing the number one mission of the CRA, which is to it's just to correct non-conforming lots. And at the end of the year, it's not wouldn't be part of the motion. End of the year, we revisit that as to what to do with that money if we don't spend it. Is that?
I don't know if I like that. Jeff, can you do that? Because the plan pretty much governs what the projects are. I'm sorry, he's doing math over there.
Yeah. Can you designate the contingency to a specific concept? I'd be uncomfortable with that, create a line item and put it in for...
I don't know so much as if it creates a line item, it creates guidance for the council because they've already committed to doing things a certain way.
What I would tell you then is that it would be best if you didn't adopt that as something in your budget, but you did a motion establishing that as your policy.
Yeah, okay.
It's $425,000 if you want to go into non-conforming, which only reaches $75,000
Per project.
for everything else, which may not be.
I'm sorry, Joe, can you say that again?
425
Is
is what you would put in 85% of 500,000 into non-conforming lots, which only leaves you 75,000 of that 500 for everything else. I'm not sure you want to do that. I think you should leave it open to you. Have the availability.
Right.
As a board, something may pop up that you really want to do. You want to pay off the debt. I know what you really want to do.
But I did like Jeff's point about don't put it in the budget, but let's make a follow-on motion on policy that we will prioritize the money in reserves to fix the original problem that stood the CRA up in place.
So the motion, I think, would be after our administrative expenses are covered. Do we have 579, is that right?
It's about 580, just...
The funds left over after debt payment and administrative expenses that are currently shown in this budget, of that amount that's left over, 15% of it will go towards the sinking fund, 85% will go to the reserve.
I like it.
Okay,
Because that's motion number one, and then that's motion number one.
let's just leave that.
And then I'll follow up with the second motion.
Okay, I have a motion by Board Member, Jeff, you got something on that?
I'm concerned because this motion is just about separating and operating, and then beach access is gone, South Patrick is all rolled into those numbers that the 85%'s come from at that point.
Well, we haven't decided that.
So-
Right now, we're just voting on this.
That's true. I think the beach, I think what
So,
he's saying is the beach access is
Yeah,
going to be
I
determined at a
thought
further date.
your discussion was going in the direction of the money that's currently in the budget in this reserves for contingency, and what Mr. Kinberg's saying is any other money after operating and debt payment.
Right, I'm rewriting the budget, that part of the budget, and we're taking the beach access effectively out for further consideration.
Okay.
Then we'll have actually, if this motion goes through, we'd have $500,000 left. If the board wants to vote to spend some of that $500,000 on beach access, that's something they can do. We're just,
179.5, is that in there?
that's 179.5 is not our money.
Ed, I don't mean to muddy this, but what Jeff is saying is, I gave you the addition of those two reserve funds, which is 580, but there is a line item for 322,677.
Is that part of that 580?
And 179,500.
And that's
Okay, well, the numbers stay the same, but I threw that 330 back in there,
No, I don't want to do that.
and then we can discuss beach access if we want to allocate it. We're talking about next year's budgets, we're not going to do the beach access this year. If we want to do beach access, we can
hold up.
still allocate it.
You have
First,
to
let's
allocate it
let's
this
first
year.
identify what our bulk amount, what amount of money we have to work with, and then we can decide, do we want to invest that in beach access? Do we want to hold that for big, nice projects that may come up during the year?
Stop. The beach access is rollover money that has to be accounted for this year, correct?
Right, you need to account for somewhere in the neighborhood of $690,000 that's rolling over. Now, part of that can be next year's debt payment, but then the rest of it needs to be allocated to a project that's going to happen.
Where's the 690 that's rolling over in this paperwork here?
Brenda, can you?
I don't remember seeing the rollover number in there. Is that part of the $800,000 we're talking about?
696, isn't it?
Yeah, fourth line up, fund balance community
Here it is.
redevelopment. That $696,837 has to be accounted for in one of those four categories we talked about before.
So we have $800,000 in next year's budget if we don't count the beach access. Is that right? And we have $607,000 left over from last year that we got to spend by the end of the month?
Well, you have to either put into a project.
Are those two separate numbers?
So we have to make sure that
But no, I still haven't
that
had-
number is accounted.
Are those two separate numbers?
You're,
Or is that 669 part of the 880 that we're talking about? I've lost track of it.
Okay, hold on. We need to, what he's saying is that we have to spend that 696,837, okay? My understanding of this is that part of that can be our principal and interest payment, all right, for the year.
because you'd be designating it to pay off debt.
Okay, we're paying off the debt, okay, and then we've got to spend, after you take out 464,990, somebody do the math.
See, what I'm trying to clarify is Joe said we have about $800,000 when you have the beach access back in. Of that $800,000, just what we just revised, is we really don't have $800,000. We really have $100,000 because $700,000 is committed from last year. Or is that last year's leftover money? You know what I'm saying? Because sometimes I hear you saying that $696,000 is 12 money that has to be spent on 12 things, and that this $800,000 is 13 money.
562 and the 330 is new money.
But maybe 300 of that is really 12 money. I don't know.
You've got
Okay.
Do you understand what I'm saying? Because I'm not
Really,
sure.
all we need to spend is 231,841, okay? So if we took that 230, what's left of that of that 696,837, you take the 464,990 from the debt payment, all right? That leaves you with 231,841, all right? That means in order to account for that whole 696,837, you take that 231,841 and apply that to your beach access improvement or something like that, and then you've accounted for that money, all of it.
It's still vague. I want to start at the top number. I don't understand what the top number is. Is the top number $800,000 or is it $800,000 plus last year's money?
No, you've got new money coming in, and that's your increment from the county and from the city, which is you've got $330,104 coming from the county. You got $562,199 coming from the city. That's your new money.
The $1,812,000 is our new money?
No,
No.
that's all of it. That's the fund balance plus the new money.
Okay.
And other transfers.
Okay. So this $1,294,000 other sources is the rollover. Part of that's the rollover money.
Here, follow this. You have roughly $900,000 in new money coming in. That's your increment for the year.
Which is the 509 and the what?
It's the 562 and the 330.
Both tick.
Both tip.
Now, what page are we on?
73.
Okay. Okay.
So you've got tax increment Brevard County, 330,104.
Okay.
All right, that's new money that's coming in.
And the 175 is new money that's coming in, right?
Don't worry about that. Let's
No, excuse me, that's not the right number.
Let's wander through this one line at a time here. So the 330 is new money. Then if you go down towards the bottom, you've got transfer from the general fund to the city tax increment to the CRA. That's $562,199. That's new money.
So that 562,199. So fresh money is almost
So that's
900.
fresh increment money.
That's $900,000.
That's stuff that whatever you do next year's budget, you can do with it. It has no strings attached to it.
So
Then
what's
it has to be budgeted.
so is the 1 million?
have-
Do we have a $900,000 left over from last year then?
Let's go through these.
Okay.
Hang with me here.
Okay.
You've got interest on your accounts, which is anticipated to be $8,300. That's money you can allocate to wherever you want it to go next year's budget.
Okay.
You have a transfer for a repayment, which is $35,338.
Okay, and that's income.
That you can put wherever you're going to put it.
Okay.
You have $179,500, which is coming from the DOT.
Now, we believe it's coming or we know for sure it's coming.
You have a contractual arrangement and you're anticipating.
So that's a lock-in. That 179 is locked in. It's not, they might give it to us, but they could have.
You have an agreement that they're going to give you that.
It's locked in.
I know. Is that agreement, though, contingent on the state funding, actually providing the funds to DOT?
If you have a contract already, it was already budgeted.
It's a
There's lot
JPA.
of, I know, but a lot of federal contracts have a contingent funding clause that the government's not obligated to pay anything.
No.
If
The
Congress doesn't
state
allocate it.
doesn't sign contracts unless they already have the budget.
Okay, so we got 179. Okay. I'll go along with that then.
Okay, you have an expenditure that goes along with that, but that money is part of your new revenue.
Okay.
So it can go anywhere, but you do have to budget $179.5 for South Patrick.
Okay.
Okay, those are your new dollars.
And what do those come up to then?
I didn't add them as I was saying it, but let's,
What's that?
Actually, 1.069.
Change the angle though.
I got 1.12 million approximately.
Which would make with that 690 rollover, make that,
the 1,115,000.
so we got 1,150,000 or what was,
1,115,441.
okay. Now that's all new money. Now,
That's all new money.
In your
Then
budget, you have 1,812,278. So the difference between the 1 million
1 and the 1,000,008,
Is
that's
that-
all rollover.
Is the line fund balance community redevelopment 696,837?
Okay, that's the difference.
And that's money you have to identify for one of those.
Okay. Okay. So that's money that we have to spend. And of that 696, so let's figure out how we spend that money first so that we can figure out what we really have. And that money has to go away this year some way, right?
Right.
It has to be burned up or sinking fund or back
Put
to
into a
the,
project that's
or
going
back to the grantors, right?
Okay, so the
Okay.
696,
Principal and
837
interest, like Lloyd said.
goes to pay principal and interest. The 464,990 of that 696,837 goes to pay principal and interest. That leaves you a balance of 231,847.
Okay. 231,847. So see, this is the way I think the budget should be put together, because we're looking with Play-Doh, we're playing with Play-Doh the way you had it written up here. We don't know what our real money is, because we don't know how that rollover breaks out. And the rollover has to be spent on something. And we have to designate it, because right now we hadn't even designated that rollover to go to the debt. So we would have had 600, it just creates a horrible ambiguity. So motion number 1, Joe, is that of the rollover funds, the 696,837, that we specify, I move that we specify that $464,990 be used to pay our debt.
Okay.
Out of that fund, out of that pile of money. We gotta get our colors right here.
Yes, you do. And then, how about the 231,847?
The 231,847, let me just throw something in there. We're wrapping up the facade grants. I don't really like the facade grants, but the guys at Complete Air, fronted money, have done a beautiful, I think it's Complete Air on the corner here.
Well, there's 2 of them, yes.
No, I'm talking about Complete Air, have done a beautiful job, and they don't want a whole lot of money to finish it off. I kind of tempted to say, well, I don't like it, I don't feel good about it, but you guys have done a great job, and money we got to spend from last year, I'd rather see it go to them. The Pizza Hut, I kind of feel the same way. The Pizza Hut is going to be, I'm assuming he's investing a lot of money on interior repairs. I don't know what he's doing there. Is that going to be an office building, John?
Yes.
Is that going to be an office building?
Isn't facade grants going to be paid with this year's funds, though?
Yeah.
Facades are being paid with this year's funds, not next year's funds. All right, I would just like
Oh,
to
no, I
point
know
out-
that, but where's the money is coming out of last year's funds. This is the 200, we got to have money to pay it. That's the $221,000 that we have left over. If we're going to grant facade grants, it's got to come out of last year's funds, and that's the 231 that you just identified, as I understand it. Does that sound right?
Question is that 696,837, does that have you subtracted out any facade grants that we would pay with this current fiscal year's funds?
The question is the grant money going to come out of this year's funds?
I know it's going to come out of this year's funds, but this 696,837 fund balance, okay, that's exclusive of these 2 facade grants that we would perhaps approve.
Let me flip Lloyd's question around a lot. Do you already have money in your pocket to pay for facade grants that's not included in this rollover balance? I mean, if we gave away this whole rollover balance and let it roll over, the 231 roll over back to the county and the city, could you pay for the facade? Do you have money left over for facade grants?
Well, that's an estimated amount. So at the end of this month, I'm going to come to you with the actual amount.
No, that's not what I'm asking though, Brenda. Is if we told you you can't use any of that 696 for facade grants, do you have money put away, $35,000, $40,000, $50,000 already cut away from the 12 budget to pay for those facade grants?
The question is whether you have the $100,000 that you allocated.
Is there any left?
Did you spend all of the $100,000 or do you have any money remaining?
Well, and also was it segregated from the overall amount? It's never been segregated. So where's that at in here?
These 2 grant applications
Well, I'm not so concerned about the amount of the grants. What I'm trying to figure out is from a budget perspective, if we've got $696,000 left after they put away on a separate shelf $50,000 for potential facade grants, then we have more money to talk about. If that $50,000 was kind of a conceptual make-believe kind of money that would have come out of our base income for the year, then it's part of the 696. And I want to be clear, and I think that's what Lloyd's trying to do, is
Where is that facade grant money?
And
We took it out
I
for this
apologize, I'm not part of the money discussion, I
Yeah.
haven't been in with Brenda, but my guess is that hasn't been allocated because you don't have agreements to do that. So nobody would have encumbered those funds. Plus, you're not going to pay for them until next fiscal year. They're not going to get done that fast.
But we can obligate this year's funds for it, right?
You could, but that's a step that's going to happen after you adopt your budget, because it's later in the agenda.
But we passed a motion, all right, that stopped the facade grants at the end of September.
No, we just weren't going to budget it October
We're going
1st.
to budget it for next year.
It was pretty clear that it was.
So if we're paying it out of 12 funds, that doesn't violate, I don't think, violates our previous agreement, because we're not paying it out of 13 funds.
All right, then maybe we're just getting wrapped around the axle on this, but.
No, we're not. It's an important color of money issue. We've got to know what our money is. We got to know what color money we're using here, and we don't have any idea what color this is.
Your problem's going to be in including those facade grants and talking about money that would have otherwise rolled over, is you don't know what they're going to ultimately be. They can give you an estimate of $5,000. It may be $4,500. It may be something else. So you're better off, if you choose to go ahead with facade grants tonight, to pay for those out of next year's budget somehow. Just because you can allocate this year's money, but you don't know what the expense is ultimately going to be.
No, we can cap the facade grant, though, and then we know what it is.
But it may come in lower. The people may never finish it. There's a laundry list out there of people who got facade grants and never undertook the project.
So the downside of that would be is if we gave each of these guys, the total of these two guys, 20 grand, I know it's not the number, for facade grants, and they never used it, that would have to roll back over to the granting authorities.
Right. Then you got to.
So what's wrong with that?
It's just too much of an administrative tap dance. If you can just budget it next year and not have to worry about that.
Hey,
But we have a problem because we made a motion not to
We
budget
don't
any
even
money.
want to keep things as clean as possible.
And we don't know if that money, what we're trying to figure out is, was that money budgeted last year, and was it put on a separate line that's not included in the 696? That's what we're trying to figure out. Is it part of the separate from or part of the 696? Because, you know, you got a pocket of money every year, right? And you chip away at that pile of money. And if you're going to commit to doing $50,000 in facade grants, then your $600 that you have for the year is going to become $550. And when you commit to doing something else, your $550 is going to become $400. So what I'm trying to figure out is, did we chop that off, and is there another $50,000 or $20,000 out there that's being held to the side for a facade grant? And it's a lot of money. And it's a lot of money to our citizens when they see that we have $20,000, $30,000. We don't even know where it's sitting.
Brenda?
Yeah, I see it right there.
Great.
How much is left?
I don't know how much has been spent.
But see, the question is, it's not what was budgeted. It's when we look at what's left over, has money been taken out and put in a separate box for those facade grants, or is it part of the 696? And what I'm hearing is, it's really part of the 696.
Actually, I'm not. I'm hearing the facade grant money is this year's money. This 696 is next year.
The 696 is a leftover from last
It's
year.
also part of this year's money.
It's leftover money. It's got a
rollover.
It's got two colors.
But it's my understanding that we had $100,000 put away for facade grants for this year, right?
In this current year.
Right. And when we get to it at midnight tonight, the facade grant discussion for these two, that is going to be discussed with regard to what's left over in that $100,000 that we have.
Let me suggest, Mr. Chair, that we take a quick restructuring. I hate to do this, but we haven't finished last year's money, last year's work yet. Well, I would suggest we move those facade grants up to discuss them now, decide if we're going to approve them, and then deduct that money from the leftover.
Here.
And then we know what number we're dealing with, and we're using last year's money to pay for them.
Here's the other thing, Ed. Facade grants, usually in the year that you approve them, you have to have the money in the budget. We're going to have to know how much is in this CRA budget. If there is zero, as in past years, we will say, sorry. So you have to know that. So we're going to have to know how much is in the facade grant program 11-12.
Well, there was $100,000 that was line item for it. How much of that $100,000 was spent?
It's
Well,
line 559.48.00.
But Ed, here's the other thing, Ed. I know you're hung up on this, but 17,500 of 18. Ed. I'm sorry. I know you're hung up on this, but the total amount of the grants are 17.5 in a $1.812 million budget. We're talking minor percents of finding 17.5. It has to be in this year's budget. If not, it's off the board.
In the
We have to-
2012 budget?
And the 12 budget does not have anything for grants.
That's right.
So you don't, it has to be in the 11-12 budget.
Let me try and approach this a different way, John. I think I'm finally kind of figured out. Let's just assume 2012 is over.
Okay,
Whatever's been spent for facade grants, whatever's been done is over. And now that it's all over, we have $696,000 left that was never used.
correct,
And now we're budgeting for next year.
correct.
So, but we've got 696 that was never used. This kind of gets back to the point what I was going to say is, we've already decided, we haven't voted yet, we've already indicated, or have a motion on the floor to designate 400-something of that to the loan.
464.9.
Great.
What I would like to do is designate some of that to pay for facade grants that are approved tonight. But we have to approve those facade grants first, so that we know how much money that is.
Okay, here's, Ed, write down this number, 231,847.
I got that a couple of times already.
Okay, that's what you have left over. You have to do something with that. The 322,677 is beach access. I think Lloyd was going to say we should just put that into beach access.
Right, not all of it.
Just
But, I mean, you could do one of the beach access fixes. I mean, fix Sunrise at 167,
Yeah.
389, and then you've got plenty of
You- I don't think-
for facades.
I don't think that you have the authority, unfortunately, to pay facade grants with next year's money, because we have voted not to
You
do
made
it.
a motion.
Yeah, right. So we got to go with this, Ed, and I think we're talking, at the most, 17.5 out of 1.12. We got to put this to bed.
Okay, so and that's kind of circles around to the point I was getting, Joe, I just made a moment ago. I think that what we could do is, because we're still on last year's budget, right?
No.
This is still, the fiscal, when's the fiscal year for the state?
Well, you're going to
I might be thinking
recapitulate
federal.
the budget on the, not recapitulate, but
Is
you're going to
this is
finalize
September
on the
30th end of the year?
27th.
What's the
Yes.
fiscal year?
We
Same
need
as the
to-
federal, right?
we need to go
Okay.
beyond what-
So we can take the 2012 money, approve the two facade grants that we have out of the 2012 money.
You're not going to know how much you have left over in 2012 till the 27th of September. And then you're going to have to make a motion to do something with that for next year. On the 27th of September is when we, and it is on here, is when we finalize 2012.
For the
So-
CRA?
Yes.
Which is a
Yes,
horrible night.
it's only CRA.
Okay, so then, okay, I didn't understand that. So we can put, then what I would like to do then is defer the facade grants until the 27th.
Well,
Because of the 27th.
if you approve them tonight, you got to see if the money's there. If the money's there, it comes out of this year's
Okay,
budget.
so we could have a motion to approve these two facade grants contingent on availability of funds.
Correct.
For 2012.
That would be
Okay.
the
Gotcha.
thing on that. But let's look at the budget. You have,
We have a motion on the floor. Yeah.
I think so.
What was it again?
Lenore, can
You better restate
you go back to page
Page
3?
I think it was,
Okay, let's see what
I think it was page 4.2.
no. And I don't know if you should put specifics on the amounts. I think you should just put 15%.
That's why I went back to percentages, because you're right, until the 27th, I thought we could make the decisions tonight, but if we've got a couple of weeks of flux to play with, to pay bills and stuff,
When you,
we wrap up.
you do.
That's our closeout. And we can spend money on the 27th if we want to,
You probably put it into 2015.
except for the side grants, we can't do that.
Okay,
This is why it's just a budget amendment.
okay.
You don't spend more money, you just do a budget amendment. That's all you're doing.
And then you just, but
You will reallocate anything that's left over to more projects, or repay debt, or put into.
yeah, I mean,
So the 27th is the day that we'll know how much money's left over from 12, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
You're trying to mix up a checking account with your budget, and that's what you're trying to do, and it's so hard for people to keep the two separate, and that's what you're trying to do, and you're mixing the two up, and it's so hard to keep them separate.
Yeah, that's kind of like our mission, is to keep them separate.
But it's hard to do when you do budgets.
Okay, but the bottom line is, on the 27th, Brenda's going to give us a number and say, there's this much money left over in the 2012 CRA budget.
I'm looking
Right.
at her to
And if that's correct, then at that time, really, my motion to dedicate 400 and something thousand towards a debt payment really is premature also, because that has to wait till the 27th.
No, because we need to pass this.
No,
budget.
that's in 12-13 budget.
That's a
Okay,
budget
that's
issue,
already.
not a checkbook issue.
Yeah, that's not checkbook. Okay, Lenore, you found it. We may want to manipulate it or mitigate it.
This is what I believe Mr. Kendall made a motion to do. Put away 15% toward the future budget payment into the sinking fund, then put the remaining 85% into the reserves, which is approximately $500K, and designate 85% of the leftover money to accomplishing the number one goal, which is to correct non-conforming lots. And at the end of the year, we can revisit this as far as, whether it has to be.
That's very good, Brenda.
Ed,
And Lenore, that's pretty good.
now,
Yeah, except I take the
you just want to
$500,000
stop
out.
at 15% sinking fund, 85% contingency, and nothing else after that? Or do you want to put in
But the other thing was a
85%
policy
of
issue.
it?
I'd like to make it two separate motions.
Okay, so make the first motion, 15% sinking.
15%, whatever the FY12 leftover amount is on the September 27th. Is that right?
No. You just want to know the 12-13 budget,
Okay.
what goes into the reserves, 15% sinking, 85% reserve contingency.
After operating expenses and,
Yeah.
and debt payment. Okay.
Second.
And that's, okay. Just so I understand what I said.
What about
Is that-
the capital outlay?
That's what we'll figure out next.
Yeah.
So after operating expenses and debt payment, the remaining funds will go 15% to sinking, 85% to reserves. Is that how you got it, Lenore? That's operating and debt payment.
I think that's perfect right there.
Okay.
Okay, I have a motion by Board Member Kinberg, second by Board Member Billman. Okay, Lenore?
CRA member Allison,
Yes.
CRA member Beeman,
Yes.
CRA member French,
Yes.
CRA member Rhodes,
Yes.
CRA member Billman.
Yes.
CRA member Kendall,
Yes.
Chair Galante.
Yes, thank you for the discussion, and, okay. Now, Ed, I would like to save those comments, but can we get through what they're here for?
Yeah.
Some of those
The other stuff is policy
some of the
stuff.
other agenda, yeah, let's get
Make it
through
an
the
agenda
policy
item
stuff.
for the next meeting.
I'm going to try and get through the policy
So
stuff.
next meeting, we really got to break out it sounds like the next meeting, we really
So we can,
allocate that leftover money.
And then we'll discuss.
I think, yeah.
Jeff and Brenda, yes. We have 15% sinking, 85% contingency. We stopped right there. We're going to discuss other contingencies, but we want to do.
Right, if I'm correct, you've wiped away all your projects.
That's
You just
Uh,
said, this is non-operating fund money. It's 85-15. Now you have to talk about your projects.
Right.
So it'll actually come out of the 85, so that 85 won't actually go into a contingency, some of it may go into capital.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that's good.
So there's no approved projects, it's just a chunk of money.
Right.
We'll
And now-
pay for them out of reserve.
And on September 27th, we'll know how much that chunk of money is, and then we can allocate it.
No.
Wait a second.
You can't. No. You have to adopt a budget tonight. You must adopt a budget tonight. That budget must say where certain things are going.
Right, but
The
we can then-
27th, you're just moving some stuff around to allocate for what's been spent.
Your language is correct.
You
but
have to have a
it's-
budget. You
it's-
can't just say, we're putting in the contingency. You can't do that.
It's the same end result.
But you can't do what you said you want to do. You have to allocate some money to some projects.
The 27th is for the 11-12 fiscal year.
Yes.
You have to adopt a budget for next year. You're confusing.
And we're
what's happening.
leaving our money for next year in reserves.
But you can't do that. Your budget can't be a giant reserve.
And we were told we can't
Because
figure out, we were just
you
told a
have
few minutes
money
ago,
that-
though, that we can't
allocate that money because we don't know how much it is, because we don't know how much is left over until
You
the
have to
27th.
assume that the estimates that were given to you are the money you have.
Okay, well, that's
You
changes.
have to assume that.
Okay. If that's what we have to assume, then we go back to what Lloyd said. We designate out of that 85% that 400 and, whatever the debt payment was, 464,990 out of that 85% has to go debt payment. Because all of the money, excuse me, we already took care of debt payment, I'm sorry. We already took care of debt payment.
You have to lay out some capital projects.
You have to lay it, so you would be severely frowned upon if your entire budget is reserves. That's a no-no.
Well, it'd be nice if we had some projects we could put it
Yep.
against. If we had
Absolutely.
projects that would fix the initial issue.
You have
we
some
could put it
projects,
against them.
let's say right off the bat, you have to allocate something with South Patrick, you're getting a grant to do it.
Right.
So that must be in your budget. So there you go, there's a project.
That's 179 right there.
That's 179.5 right there. You have to do that.
Well, Jeff, if you want us to put that in there, why wasn't it in there initially?
It's South Patrick, 179.5, you have an
Okay,
expenditure.
so that's not, okay,
That has to remain.
great, okay, I understand that.
You have an
That's
agreement
awesome.
that you're going to get money and you're going to do that project.
But that's
So you
in
gotta-
addition to the 696,837,
Yeah.
correct?
Your
From the previous,
revenue is an addition. You can identify that as one of the projects coming from your 696.
let's describe this one more time, all right? We have a fund balance of 696,837.
Correct.
We are going to carry forward.
Estimated fund balance of 696.
Let's just get past that, all right? We're bringing that forward into our FY13 budget.
Correct.
Okay. We're also getting from the DOT 179.5,
Correct.
in addition to that 696. Okay, so that's not even on the table. We are taking 464,990 of that 696, all right, and paying our debt, principal and interest. That leaves us, here's that number again, 231,847 that we have, that we need to identify for projects in FY13. If you take the Sunrise property, all right, improvement at, how much was it? It was,
146,050.
I thought it was more than that.
Unless there was was that the one where they had we had a carryover too, or was
No,
that
167,389 was the Sunrise property.
the 21 from the year before then? So that's
Okay?
Mine says
So-
146.
I'm just taking it from the budget.
Okay.
Okay, it's 146?
It is.
Okay, what?
Extra.
Okay. And then, Magellan is,
And there's Shell.
Shell is 85, so if you add those two together, you've got just about,
230.
you got about 237K?
For Sunrise and Magellan?
Yeah.
No, Sunrise and Shell.
But-
Sunrise and Shell.
If we just do,
Sunrise and Shell.
if we just do Sunrise, okay, that's going to leave us ample money to pay for facade grants, okay, out of next year's funds.
You can't pay for facade grants on next year's funds, only this year's funds.
So that's what we're getting hung up with.
That's the issue.
Okay, but because this money is coming from this year's funds, okay, we'll have funds left over in there to pay, okay, and whatever is left over beyond that can go into the sinking fund.
I thought federal funds were hard.
I'll say this one more time.
No.
Let me back up a little bit first
Open
of
the
all.
projects again.
We don't have anything in the record that this board has directed, out of the 669 leftovers, that we've directed that 484 be applied towards debt. I think for the record, we need a motion that clarifies it so that when they start doing an audit, they can say, here's the 696 that was left over, and here's where 484 of it went. As we spend off that money, we need to tie it to things, because it has to be spent or given back. And we don't want to spend it and then not have a record of it and say, well, we don't know what you spent it on, so we have to give it back. So step number one is we have to have a motion that the debt will be paid out of the rollover funds from FY12. No, we didn't have that, but we were starting to talk about it, we didn't do it. So I'm going to make that motion, first of all, which will get us down to your 231, and then we can talk about your 231.
Well, I think before we make any more motions and screw this up anymore, I think what I would like to hear from the consultants who we're paying to put this budget together, we need to hear from you what you need us to do. And
I would like to correct, they didn't put this budget together.
okay, well, I'm sorry.
We're still paying you, so can you tell us
Yeah.
what we need to do?
Or Brenda, I mean, somebody needs to, I mean, we're a board. We don't put this stuff together. We don't know all the particulars. We need to be told by you or by Brenda what you need us to do, what policies you need us to make a decision on, what numbers you need us to make a decision on. If there are things we can just tell you, yes, go do, that's fine, or if you need a motion, that we need that too, rather than us pulling up motions out of the wazoo.
Would you like a suggestion on the best way to handle this?
Yes, please.
Okay, here's the best way to handle this. You have before you the expenditure detail. Let's, for a moment, assume that you haven't had any discussion on where to spend the money yet. Okay? I would take this detail and essentially Mr. Kinberg's idea of the 15 and 85%, I would apply that to the money that you currently have allocated here in reserves and the sinking fund. Okay? I would identify the debt payment as rollover from this year, and I would leave South Patrick at $179,500. I would leave the total amount for beach access improvements as $322, but I would break it into two lines. I would break it into a line of anticipated money rolling over from last year.
Okay.
So I would even call that 2011 beach access improvement.
Okay.
And a new line called 2012 beach access improvement. I would separate those lines as to what you think will be rolling over, and then make a motion that any reduction from that 696 that's out there that's rolling over will come from the 2011 line. So that will reduce the beach access line there, and then leave your budget there. Remember, your budget's a fluid document. You don't want to spend it in beach access. If it's new money, you just move it next year. Worry about it next year. You're making a lot of changes that we don't really need to do. We're muddying the waters where we don't need to.
I think that's great. That's an outstanding suggestion. But getting back to Mr. Billman's point, do you need a motion to do all that, or can we just instruct the staff that this is how we want it done?
I would like a motion.
What do you need for the record?
I would suggest what you would do is someone would make a motion to adopt the resolution approving the budget. Somebody amend that resolution to include the changes we just talked about, and then you approve it. So a motion to approve the resolution puts this budget on the floor. Then someone else makes a motion to amend the resolution.
Yeah.
You make those changes in the budget, and you approve the amendment to the resolution, then you approve the resolution.
And the amendment to the, you just listed the things that should be in the amendment to the resolution. Can you relist them for me? I want to write them down this time.
Okay. You will identify that the debt payment for next year is coming from rollover money, the $464,990.
Okay.
You separate, you leave the South Patrick Drive improvement number as is.
Which is how much, 332?
179,500.
Oh, sorry, I'm sorry. South Patrick, 179,500, okay.
Separate the beach access improvements to two lines. One would be 2011 beach access improvements.
Left over from 2 years ago.
So well, that would be the beginning of the, this is the 11-12 fiscal year. Right. If you want to call it 11-12 beach access improvement.
And the federal is 12 and.
But however you want to do it, identify that as the old money. Leave the difference between, and I apologize, I don't have my calculator right now, the difference between the 696 and the 464, identify that in the 211 line.
Is it 212? You mean it's the 212 beach access?
Right. Okay, well,
I'm sorry, you're right.
212 beach access.
We come up with two numbers, a 2011 beach access, a 2012 beach access.
Right.
Okay.
And then you identify that any changes in the 696 number from this year when you do your budget amendment will automatically come from the line in the 2012 beach access improvement. So if you have changes there and there's less money rolling, it'll come out of that line because you don't have to roll it over and you don't have to leave it in that line.
Okay, this is what I was getting to at the beginning, is identifying
where our money's coming from.
Okay.
And I think next year we need to work a budget in this manner.
And we'll have some discussions, we'll certainly help Brenda out. We'll talk about how, one of the best ways to identify rollover money in future budgets is to name them that way. So you know
And your
what money's
recommendation
coming
is
from.
to the most effective way to do that is a motion to approve the budget and an amendment to the motion.
Correct.
Why, okay, I'm not sure I understand why that's the most effective way, but that's okay.
Okay, so the resolution that you have printed, approve that, and then create a,
You put that on the floor,
okay,
and then somebody makes a motion to amend that.
and then to amend it.
And you amend that because that resolution includes the budget document, the numbers.
Okay. And that gives us the paper trail so that we can show we spent the last year's money
And
for
it shows also,
legitimate
with the
purposes.
discussion we've had, which money you've allocated from last year into what projects.
Okay.
So it's on the record, that's the money.
That's what I wanted to make
If there's an
clear.
audit, the auditor goes back to this discussion, and you've identified, this is the money that rolled from last year.
We don't have a resolution number.
There's no, yeah, what's the resolution number?
That's because you haven't identified, you haven't adopted anything, who knows, it's something that Lenore can add later, I assume it was.
Is there a resolution in here? Here it is.
Yeah. Okay,
Just gonna give a number, I think.
okay, the resolution, this is what what we'd like to do. The resolution is read it, amend it, and then we'll vote on it.
Okay.
Go ahead, Chief. Just a small.
Nor reads it?
Lenore, do you want to give us we'll get a number. Ed, usually the lawyer reads it, so
I can read
you
it.
can read it.
Thank you. Appreciate that honor, too.
You're welcome.
Okay.
921,
Is that from like the beginning of time?
okay, Ed,
Okay. Satellite Beach Community Redevelopment Agency, Resolution 921, a resolution of the Satellite Beach Community Redevelopment Agency adopting the fiscal year 2012-2013 budget. Whereas Florida statute...
okay, that's it, that's all.
That's it, yeah.
Just the title.
Oh, just sounds great. That's easy.
Do I have a second?
A second.
Are there any changes?
I'm going to make a motion that we amend Resolution 921, using the rollover from 2011-12 to pay the principal and interest, and creating two separate line items for beach access for 2011 and 2012. Is that enough?
You might want to identify the amounts that go into those lines.
Oh,
And the 2011, how much was this?
do we have those numbers?
We have this number?
How much was the sign?
Okay, I'm going to ask Ed, after Cheryl speaks, and Greg, if you agree with those changes to your amendment.
I don't know the numbers.
Just did it for the South.
I mean, they've got
175.
167.
That'll just stay there, right?
Oh, that's right, that's already in there, so we don't need...
Do we know the numbers for 2011, 2012?
You do not.
I think
Your number for the 2000, the old line, the line that's rolling over, would be 231,847.
231,
231,847.
that's the 2011 leftovers after we paid the debt service.
And if there's a change in the budget, that's where the money's going to come from, that line.
All right, so for 2012, we want that to be about 150K for 2012, from 2012, 2013, and 85 for whatever I'm sorry, that was 150, is that what I said?
That's not,
Okay, so that leaves you 81,847 for the 2011-2012 line. Does that calculate out correctly?
I leave that one to the Master Sergeant Major.
What's the other option?
Why don't you just, you said 150 there, why don't we call it 146, that's what it is, do it now before the price goes up, and then do that one later.
Is that a hard and fast quote?
Yeah. I think it is.
You gotta put a 10% contingency in there for change orders, probably, just to be safe.
I've got it. So the new line for this year would be 90,830 for beach access.
Okay,
So
so
you'd have
to clarify, the roll,
231,847 is the rollover, and then 90,830 would be new.
so the beach access lines for 2011 rollover would be 231,847, and the 2012 line item will be 90,830.
And you would designate any change in the rollover number would be
Out of the 12.
out of the 231,847.
Okay.
Okay.
So that's
Then
part of the
your
resolution.
reserve numbers, your contingency for next year would then be $493,094.
094.
And your amount to the sinking fund would be $87,017.
That's using that 15%.
That's an 85-15 split of the money that was next.
So Greg gets what he wants anyway, darn it.
No, he did, when we voted on it, that was,
It would be $493,094 to the contingency. $87,017 to the sinking fund.
Okay. That's very good. So that's what I was trying to get to earlier. That's what I've been trying to
There,
start through.
there are still some items in here we didn't address. Some of those changes in the operating costs.
Will we vote on this, or do we need to vote on that?
You would do this all as one motion.
okay, go ahead.
We had identified $20,000 for consulting fees to make sure you can continue our contract as approved at the last meeting.
And that's already accounted for in this end
That's
result
accounted for
numbers.
in these numbers.
Okay.
It's $90,000 for the plan update to make sure that you can pay the contractual obligation for the plan. And then the change from what had the city council had seen, just another $1,000 increase to the travel for business trips. Again, that's assuming that somebody wants to go to FRA. You probably don't need that much there if nobody's going. Remember too, you can always move these monies around once this is adopted next year. So this is a very small amount of money. You may want to just not muddy the waters and just.
That becomes part of our rollover the next year if we don't spend it. Okay. I think we got it.
But the $90,000 versus $45,000, that's a little bit more, that's a little bit bigger.
Right.
What was the difference, and why did we come in at 45 versus 90?
Well, the issue was, when I was looking at your contract too, that it runs from August, September, October, and there was just 1 month in there, but evidently there may be a continuation of that, and that's what you were planning for on that?
Not in the $90,000. The $90,000 is just for the redevelopment plan, which we billed you very
You-
little
you-
for.
You have not billed us a lot, and you're planning on billing us then in 2013.
We're assuming the lion's share of that will get paid in next year.
Okay, then
so.
that's the reason.
Okay.
We didn't
So that's their 90.
Part of the resolution, right?
Because it was basically a 75 lump sum for the crafting of the plan.
74,500.
Right.
That's all part of this resolution. You're just pointing that out to us so that we know what we do when
Making
we
sure if
pass
you
it.
change any of those, then
Okay.
you know what you're changing.
I think we should.
I hate to muddy the water, but didn't we pay for that?
You didn't pay for
Wasn't
it
that
yet.
part of our initial
You didn't
discussion?
pay for it yet.
No, we
No,
haven't.
you
that-
approved it, but we haven't billed you for anything.
No, that portion has not been billed, or very, very little of it, if any. The other portions have been billed as we're going along.
We do the lion's share of
In
work on our
effect, correct, is
time.
if they
Bill
billed
you
us
when we
last
send
year
you a
for it,
product.
since they didn't bill us for it last year, it really becomes, what they did last year technically is rolling,
Okay,
become part of our rollover funds because they didn't ask to get paid.
Ed,
We're not paying interest. Okay.
Ed, you
They
have,
didn't invoice.
Ed, you have made a motion. Greg, you have seconded, and
I amended it.
you amended it. The people that made the motion have to agree to the amendment.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Lenore.
You don't have to.
CRA member Allison,
Yes.
CRA member Dean,
Yes.
CRA member French,
Yes.
CRA member Rhodes,
Yes.
CRA member Gilman,
Yes.
CRA member Kemper,
Yes.
Chairman
Scared Joe.
Yes, and motion is unanimously approved. Thank you for your help on that, getting us through that. Now, agenda item number 14, our next meeting is, just kidding. Hey, Mike, what are you here for, Mike? Which one? Are you here for,
I was just, in the event, discussion on beach access, raised a question about how it affected county grants. I wanted to be here, but it's nothing you need to be concerned over.
okay, I just wanted to make sure you weren't on here and that we would move you up and move you in. Okay, you're welcome.
Hey, Joe, I just want to make one comment with a view towards next year. Is when next year's budget gets prepared, I'd like to see this format again where we where we have a proposal on how to use the rollover broken down by items. I think that's a lot of
We're learning a lot on budgets, both council side and CRA
So
side.
that would be helpful, Brenda, next year, so we can
Learned, and I heard that from Cheryl on the council budget. Great. Okay, let's press. Good. Yes.
I plan on giving, next year, for the new council, I plan on doing kind of a little, budget 101.
Good. I think it'd be great, Brenda.
That'd be great.
I would really like to do that. Even with department heads, I kind of had to do that.
Okay. Hey,
It's very generous.
everyone needs continual training. Okay, thank you. Hey, I'm not going to take any breaks, guys. If you want to take a break, you can take one. Let's do agenda item number 4A. I'm not going to take it. So 4A is draft redevelopment plan presentation.
We passed that one to Lorraine.
Oh, good, Lorraine. Okay.
It's only Enfield, and that's just getting started.
I see a couple of them.
Just get the PowerPoint up on the screen. Warm it up.
Oh, you know what?
You got one?
There you go.
What are these?
Well, I'm missing some of them.
There we go.
Here's the data, here's what you need to approve.
Okay, Mr. Chair, if
Hi.
timing's right,
Go
I'll go
ahead,
ahead and start
Lorraine.
the presentation. This is a presentation on the draft redevelopment plan. I've got a number of bullets to kind of outline where we're going with the redevelopment plan, and then later this year, we're going to give you the whole document so you can review it and see the details. And we'll have time to talk about some of the details in our CRA board meetings between now and that time as well. Some of you may have seen Jeff and I walking around the CRA a couple weeks ago. We ran into the mayor, and we walked property by property to understand the physical aspects of each property and what challenges that each one might face as it moves forward. I mean, because the ultimate goal is to get reinvestment in the area. And before I get into some of the details,
Lorraine, can you speak into, is that microphone hot?
sure,
Do you know?
let me bring it closer to me,
Thank you.
just in case. And before I go into the details, one thing I picked up as we walked around is I picked up on of course, everybody here is very familiar with the fact that this is a surfing community. You're very attuned to the ocean. And I picked up a few of the wave motifs around here at the end of DeSoto. Somebody painted the beach access area with a wave and sun motif. Of course, the Italian restaurant has the wave and sun. And then there's that mosaic on Shell Street by the mailboxes at the utility building. And I think that's something that you already have incorporated in some of your banners, and we don't have a specific aesthetic theme offering in the presentation tonight, but just something to keep in mind for the future is that you do have to keep that surfing theme, the wave theme, in any projects as you move forward. So I wanted to point that out as an observation. So first, part of the plan is outlining the objectives for the Community Redevelopment Agency. And we developed this list based upon the stakeholder interviews, the workshops, and input that we've gotten from the CRA Board. One is review return on investment on CRA projects, make sure these projects are worthy. Let's see what you're going to get actually out of each of the projects. Conservative fiscal-driven growth, ensure business-friendly implementation of building and zoning codes, enhance your attractive small beachside town, especially for residents and visitors, attract uses that serve the local community, increase employment, and increase the tax base. At the last meeting, the CRA Board set the priorities for the plan: address nonconforming lots, pay down the debt, aesthetics and safety, and community outreach and recognition. So let's talk about nonconforming lots. And in this case, for your community, nonconforming lots are those challenging lots where it's not easy to necessarily build back to what was there before, or the lots for various reasons don't fit, maybe because of the adoption of the zoning code, or maybe some various reasons. And for zoning geeks like John and I, it's not a traditional nonconforming, but we're using it in a very broad sense. So in one of your biggest challenges is stormwater. And as we walked up and down A1A, you know, it's very clear on the west side, you have to set a lot of land aside for stormwater facilities. We ran into a lot of culverts. You know, just walking on the west side of A1A in the grass, it was a fairly uncomfortable experience, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. And the ABC Liquors is a wonderful example of the extent that businesses have to go to accommodate current standards for stormwater. There's 30 feet wide detention areas on both the north side and the south side of the building. Of course, that takes away from the floor area maybe they could have had if stormwater could have gone somewhere else. So that's a significant challenge for the properties in the area. So one of the priorities for the CRA plan, for the CRA board, may be to look at future stormwater projects. Could it be working with the property owners where one property owner offers stormwater detention on their lot in cooperation with the neighbor? Are there CRA-owned properties that could have stormwater detention? Maybe it could wind up being a stormwater park. You've seen in other communities, they have a stormwater detention area with maybe a walkway around it, benches and things like that. Of course, if it fits with the priorities. Are there other methods so that way folks in the future don't have to reserve so much of their property for stormwater? So we think that should be a high priority. Continue to review land use and zoning changes. You have done a lot with your code over the years. You have, at this point, generally the code requirements are fairly reasonable, but if there's a sticking point and if the CRA board finds on a regular basis, if the building official finds on a regular basis that there's something that's getting in the way of people moving forward, then yes, let's go back and change the code. Let's talk about incentives. This is where you're going to get up close and personal with the property owners. This is where you find out from them what they need to move forward, where you make suggestions to them, develop a vision with them, and through that personal touch. Can land assembly be encouraged? For example, there are some lots that are just kind of small, and for somebody to come back, it may not be worth their while to build such a small lot, but possibly if they bought the neighbor's property, they may have enough space to get the floor area they need to make sure that that property is profitable. Could there be a cross-parking agreement? Is it possible for one neighbor to offer parking on another lot when one property owner can't make it available on theirs? The CRA can also initiate applications for variances, replatting, right-of-way vacations. CRA can take that action and bring that forward to the Planning and Zoning Board or the City Council. Like I said, that's part of the personal touch, getting involved with the property owners to see what they need to move forward, and also getting creative. Paying down the debt is also top priority. You've already taken action on that tonight. You've put aside some of the money into the sinking fund, and you're moving forward on that. So I think already you're making progress on that, and that's a top priority. Aesthetics and safety was the third priority. And as I mentioned, you know, we walked both sides of A1A, and the west side is a very uncomfortable walking experience. We did see kids walking from their school to their homes or to some of the businesses on both sides as well. You can see from the photo on the very left, there's cases throughout the CRA where you have sidewalks that just end. And then at Cassia, you can see the lines across for pedestrians across Cassia from the southern property to Sliders, but then there's nothing to greet you on the other side. So that shows you exactly some of the issues that you have in a very intimate way from the pedestrian experience. I also saw a bike rider, a waitress going to Sliders, going behind a number of the businesses, trying to make her way. If there were a sidewalk on the western side, she would probably use that to make her way a little bit more safely to her job there. You can see a number of broken sidewalks throughout the CRA. That's something that also should be looked at as part of your, not only addressing the aesthetics, but also the safety issues. You want to make it a more comfortable experience. You have a number of beach access points that's already within your budget, and it would be also appropriate to continue to improve those, the aesthetics, the safety, and so forth. One other point was with the lack of sidewalks, you know that, for example, not to bring up the ABC Liquors over and over, but if you had dinner at one of the restaurants nearby and afterwards you wanted to pick up a bottle of wine to bring home for the rest of the evening, you would still have to get back in your car, move back out into that suicide lane on A1A, and then come back over to the liquor store to get that bottle of wine. So whatever we can do, it's not guaranteed that everyone's going to get out of their car and walk from place to place, but the opportunity to provide that would kind of help the area and help the local businesses. Now let's talk about A1A and landscape medians. You do have landscape medians already in the city. This, the one all the way over on the left-hand side is DeSoto, a bit west of the of A1A. So this is something you already have in the city. It's not an unusual concept. Then now, if you're standing in the middle of A1A, this is your vision as you're driving down. And the other day, when Jeff and I returned home, you all stopped in Fort Pierce between I-95 and the Turnpike to go south, right? And you know that's not a very nice area. That Okeechobee Road, State Road 70, fairly tacky. I need to be careful. That was a former client of mine, not for the CRA, for something else, but it's kind of a tacky area. You do BP, racetrack, McDonald's, a few other businesses. You don't feel comfortable there. But over time, I've seen just in the past 2 or 3 years, they put in these gorgeous landscape medians, and all of a sudden the area has been dressed up. The businesses haven't changed, but all of a sudden I have this different sense about that one little strip between I-95 and the Turnpike. And Satellite Beach is not tacky. Satellite Beach is so-so. But you could take a so-so place, add some landscape medians, and you've got people all of a sudden going, oh, this Satellite Beach. Hey, look at these businesses over here. I haven't stopped in that thrift shop before, but I might want to go check it out, or that restaurant, or that hair salon. I might reconsider that one. So something to consider, and we think that's also a high priority. I think that's something you've all talked about for many years, and I may be preaching to the choir, but we do feel that's very important, and it makes a large difference in the way a place looks. Wayfinding. The photo at the top, the beach access point, one thing we noticed that sign faces directly west. So if you're driving north or south on A1A, you'll never see it. So it doesn't direct you to the beach. You do have some wayfinding there at DeSoto. There's the banner. It's faded right now. I think that's on order, but I think that's being taken care of. So don't pay attention to that, but do notice it has a wave theme. And then you also have some signage on Cassia right at South Patrick. And, you know, the signage right there at Cassia and South Patrick, there's really nothing wrong with it, but think back when you bought your house, when you first bought it. Let's say it's not the new house, if it's not, but you bought a house previously owned, and the first year you were there, you're going, I can't stand that tile in the kitchen. I can't stand that color in the bathroom. But then you get busy, kids, job, whatever, and you forget about it, and all of a sudden you're used to it. So as an outsider, I look at this sign, there's really nothing wrong with it, but it could be Satellite Beach style. It could have a wave theme. It could have a surfing theme. It could have something else that's inherent to this community. For example, that image on the bottom, all the way over to the right, is some wayfinding that we designed for another community that's also undergoing redevelopment. That's based upon their own theme, their organic nature, which is Pueblo and Mission style. So you do have the potential to bring in some things that really highlight what you all are about. Let's talk about property maintenance. On the left-hand side, you have that shopping plaza just south of the Japanese Thai restaurant, and there's no landscaping. There's not a tree in sight. There's not a shrub in sight. It's a big farm of asphalt in front, and there seems like there are some viable shops there, but for example, let's say if I was a frequent customer of the thrift store there, I might go, you know, there's a thrift store that's a little bit more attractive up the street. I might go there instead because that's a nicer experience for me. I feel better about my overall shopping experience. Of course, the satellite arms, it's improved since this photo. We see that there's some work going on there. So, but then you compare that to the new bank building, and you can see what a difference it can make if people follow the current code. They have the proper landscaping. They have, and that, you know, that new building there, the bank building, it fits your design standards. So it's time to start thinking about, what are your property maintenance requirements in your code? Are they adequate? Are you giving enough support to your code enforcement officers to bring people up to date?
Lorraine, if I may too.
Sure.
As a little aside, one of the interesting things is Lorraine and I have done a lot of walking the streets, taking pictures, looking at individual properties. So we've walked both South Patrick and A1A. And the interesting thing is we drive to a spot and we get out of the car and we walk. Lorraine's been doing the driving. She goes nuts going through every parking lot looking for shade to park on. There's no trees.
Yes, and that's something to consider in the future is ensuring that there's a sufficient shade in the area, tree canopy. So the fourth point, that was the fourth priority, was community outreach and recognition, gathering places, updating the community center, or looking for other opportunities for people to get together. A newsletter that highlights the activities of the CRA, that highlight the activities, the investments, new businesses, CRA project recognition for these capital improvements. If the CRA is putting the money into the beach access, make sure there is some kind of signage there that indicates this is a project, compliments of the Community Redevelopment Agency. Festivals, Surf Festival, this is something inherent and organic to the community. Farmers Market, also something that brings people out, brings them together, and they enjoy very much so on the weekends, Saturday or Sunday mornings.
Is this where we discussed the signature event concept?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Additional programs. We wanted to take a large number of programs, a large number of ideas from the stakeholder interviews, the workshops, because once you have it in your plan, then you have the opportunity to implement it. You don't have to actually implement everything. That final decision-making happens here, like the budget hearing we had earlier this evening. So, for example, review private partnerships for CRA-owned properties. That's something you're already doing by putting out that RLI for the A1A and DeSoto property. So you're already taking action on that. Underground utilities, hugely expensive project. But let's say one day FP&L comes in and says, hey, if you all put up 25, 100,000, we'll put the rest in. So at least you have it in your plan, you have that opportunity. Possibly develop a pier. That's also something that attracts people to the area. A business directory, economic and job creation incentives, encourage development of high-tech, high-employment uses. So if somebody comes in with a high-tech, high-employment use, you want to do something to help them come here. If maybe if the CRA wants to help them with, stormwater or some other infrastructure needs, that's a possibility.
Again, those are also things that came out of the charrettes, came out of some of our discussions with you, but were not on your priority list. And like Lorraine said, if it's in the plan, you don't have to do it, but if it's not in the plan, you can't do it. So we'll make some mention, so if the opportunity arises, then you can predict.
Another section of the plan that's an important part of it is CRA administration, how you get things done. First is separating your CRA attorney, the CRA auditing, CRA budgeting, and this is something that you are on your way to going to, you're evolving right now, and you're moving towards separate budgets. And it's an important response to some of the issues that the CRA had in the past. An independent CRA executive director, continuous review of CRA boundary consolidation. If there's properties that clearly don't need to be in the CRA, don't benefit the CRA, then consider moving them out. Of course, we know we have to review more on the swap agreements, really understand the whole picture, but let's keep that in there. Review the CRA plan every 5 years for update potential. I put update potential specifically because let's say in 5 years you find that the plan that you adopt through this project is just fine. Why spend the money and the time to update it if there's no need? So let's just keep that open. If you do need to update it, review it and go through that process. If you don't need to update it, leave it alone and continue marching forward. And create a CRA capital improvements plan. That way you're laying out the exact capital improvements that you expect the CRA to do over a 5-year period. That way you have some longer-term goals to implement that plan. So the first action I'm going to request, and of course this is also a time to open up the draft redevelopment plan for discussion questions, is to approve the draft redevelopment plan. This is not the whole plan itself, but this is our framework for flushing out the redevelopment plan into that full document.
Okay, let me bring it back. Thank you. Draft redevelopment on the 4 items that any have some questions, maybe things that are missing, things that we'd like added. Actually, thank you for everything and for doing your ground research on getting this done, Larry. Thank you. I do have a question. I didn't see on aesthetics and safety anything for sight impaired or any of those things. Are you doing anything for?
Do we have it?
Are we going to include anything for, sight impaired people? There are beepers that go on poles and stuff. Are we doing anything for safety compared with disabilities?
Anything that gets included will be that which meets ADA requirements. And most of those things are included within current ADA. They're required to be there.
So if you have an ADA, like we have a CFAL, Community for a Lifetime program, if you want to add one of those things for the elderly, it would be available through, or the disabled.
Yeah, and we can include a line on the streetscape saying, appropriate accommodations for
disabled,
for the disabled
or elderly. I mean, I think that's a smart thing. Bigger signage, maybe something like that.
If I may, just as a complete aside, because you brought up the elderly, I was talking with some folks this year. Now the Redevelopment Association is now entering into a partnership with AARP. So they will be at the conference. We've granted them a booth, and they're going to start getting involved in some of those programs through the Redevelopment Association.
Is this the draft redevelopment plan, the slideshow?
Yes, we call it a draft redevelopment plan. It's really more, a draft direction for us.
That's okay. I just wanted to make sure I knew what we were talking about because there wasn't anything else in here.
Yeah.
And Mayor, if I could, Mr. Chair, I could include communities for lifetime principles within the CRA plan.
Excellent. Thank you.
I like it. I like it.
What's the next step, Jeff?
Approve it.
You give us a blessing on this, and then we turn this into the full-blown document.
Okay, and then when you do the full-blown document, do you have a public hearing on it?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, after you bless, so to speak, the framework, the draft redevelopment plan, I have a schedule for the CRA, for the board to approve.
You need a motion for this?
Yes, let's do it.
Okay, so I'll move that we approve the draft CRA plan presented this evening on the slideshow.
Okay, Lenore, I have a motion by Board Member Kinberg and Board Member Billman. Since it's only a draft, the public's going to have comment even after we go. I'm just ready. We'll just do this. Okay, we're ready. Yes.
CRA member Allison?
Yes.
CRA member Dean?
Yes.
CRA member Frank?
Yes.
CRA member Rose?
Yes.
CRA member Billman?
Yes.
CRA member Kemper?
Yes.
And Chair Ferrante?
Yes, thank you. Great start. And when it comes back, and then we'll have public comment and stuff on that. All right, Jeff, let's press.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
We also asked the city manager.
The board meeting.
This is going to be posted on the website?
There's nothing to, I'm not sure if this is going to be.
We can post that PowerPoint on the
I think it'd be good
website.
to post
Absolutely.
this
Actually, we can take that PDF.
Draft or whatever you want to call it, but I think that it'd be nice to have it on the website so the citizens can read it.
You're right.
Okay, next for the board.
I want to, just to make sure, the other part of this is I want to review the schedule for the CRA plan and also get a motion to approve that. So what we're going to do is we're going to have the full draft plan available to the CRA and the public before December. And we would like to have the CRA board hold a meeting on December 13th, that's a regular meeting, to recommend the CRA plan. Then, because of some scheduling, I kind of looked at some of the calendar in December, and it looks like it was a bit tricky to get all the meetings done before the holidays after that. So we're moving then to January 10th. We would like to request a special meeting of the Planning and Zoning Board just before the regular CRA board meeting, possibly having the meeting at 4 or 5 o'clock.
Can I make just one statement?
Sure.
There may not be a planning and zoning board.
Okay.
So I'm not sure what, I mean, there is a referendum to combine CPAB and PZAB on the November, and I don't know if that goes to a different reviewing authority or somebody else.
The plan would go to the local planning agency, whoever that is.
Whatever that ends up being
So
called.
whoever that board is at that time.
Okay.
And this isn't set in stone, this is what we're hoping will happen.
Okay.
We have holiday issues and your scheduling of meetings, but this is what we're hoping you'll bless, and we can proceed with this in mind. Okay.
What is the notice? What's that about?
Right, then your adoption hearing would be January 16th, 2013. Chapter 163 requires that 15 days in advance of the City Council adopting the CRA plan, you do have to send out a notice to the taxing authorities. That notice would come specifically from the City Council in this case.
There's also a requirement in there to advertise that you're going to have a hearing to amend your plan, but that's actually within the period between the notice to the taxing authorities and the adoption. So that doesn't necessarily need a date up there, but it would happen during that period.
So the December 13th meeting will be for this body to review the plan and give it the blessing to go to council on the 16th of January.
Correct.
Okay. And then the 16th of January will be the council approving the plan.
I'd like to point out something that in 163, on the modification of a plan, there's no requirement in the text of the statute that it go to the local planning agency. That step is there in the adoption of a new plan. However, your plan must always be in conformance with your comprehensive plan, and that's the board that holds the comprehensive plan.
Right.
So we schedule that, even though if you look at the text, it doesn't say it has to go there.
And I'm wondering if 6 days is enough, or do you actually need to have that, whatever that body ends up being, the Planning and Zoning Board, whatever we end up calling that if it changes, should that be before the board recommendation, just in case there are some disconnects between the big plan and this plan?
That disconnect, if there is one, throws us off a little bit. I think Lorraine had said, talking about having that meeting right before the CRA meeting, so if there is a change, the CRA can make any adjustments. I would tell you, in all my years of doing this, I've never seen where planning and zoning wants to change something. They have lots of questions, but I haven't seen where they've wanted to change it. But if they do, we've identified that that's the same day as the CRA meeting, so it can be addressed right away.
Well, I'll just tell you, after having reviewed the comp plan here recently, there are issues in the comp plan that are in direct disagreement with some CRA issues. So I think that probably needs to be worked sooner versus later.
And I can be in communication. I think you have a consultant that's working on that. We can communicate with him, and we can work those out in advance.
I think the schedule, though, should include how the public is going to get involved in this, because if I just looked at this, I would say that this board is not going to see anything till the 13th, but that's really not true, is it?
You'll have it in advance of the 13th to review. We can also put it on the website.
What's in advance mean? The
We'll
12th isn't very good.
I think we'll probably have it at least 2 weeks in advance to you all.
And can we post that on,
Also, let's say by December 1st.
can we post that?
Put that as a date in your plan to deliver the draft, to deliver the proposed plan to the board by the...
To the board and have available to the public. That's one of the reasons I didn't have a public hearing on this right now, because we need to have some...
I would suggest there'd be nothing wrong once we deliver a draft to notice a public hearing on the city and the CRA's websites and have it as a downloadable feature off the website. There's no problem with that.
Yeah, I think we need that. I mean, I really want that. I didn't mean to.
Well, 2 weeks before that would be the 29th of November, and Thanksgiving's a week before that on the 22nd, so if that helps.
Yeah, you could probably do something. We're only going to post it. We're not going to meet.
Right.
We're going to post it and have it to us. This board needs to look at that. This is a heck of a plan. How long do you need to look at it? I know that you know. Probably.
Yeah, you have to eat it in little pieces.
If you would allow me, I will commit to, at no charge to you, writing a press release that you all can send out. We won't send it out, but I'll write it and forward it, and you can send it. As soon as we deliver the draft, you'll have a press release, and you can tell the whole world it's going to be on the website, and it's going to be heard, and we have no problem
And also
doing
deposit
that.
to the library, Joe.
Yeah, I think that'd be great, Jeff. I just want to make sure that we get...
On your notice date, isn't January 1st like the holiday, New Year's Day?
Yeah, that's
Yeah, that would be problematic.
Yeah, it would be a holiday.
Yeah, we can adjust that date to make sure that we...
no later than.
Second's
Yeah.
okay, but...
Yeah.
No later than
Second
January.
is
Yeah,
not, has to be good to have a
goal,
goal,
though.
What the statute said is
Right,
it
so
must
we
be
just-
mailed to the taxing authorities 15 days in advance. It doesn't say they have to get it 15 days, it says it has to be mailed.
Can
So
you
we
back
can
it
mail
mail
it
on
on
December
December
30th?
We can send it on the 31st.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's fine, so this, what's about on the work?
If you guys would do us also a favor, redo this plan schedule based upon what we've just discussed, and upload the schedule and the briefing to the Transparent Satellite Beach webpage in a separate new CRA plan file or folder, and just so citizens can go there and find it all in one spot.
Okay, well, we'll do that, and we'll provide that
There you go.
to Ann to have staff
A
upload.
lot of that info on the transparency page is not going under the CRA page, and it's causing a lot of confusion.
It should be a link.
It should be linked together.
I agree.
And also, there's a lot of stuff that needs to be updated on the CRA page.
There's some really old stuff on that page that needs to come down so people don't get confused.
I don't think, yeah, you have not been looking at that page at all. Okay. All right, we're fine, a revised schedule, just with as many dates as you can think of to put in there so that all the citizens and we know. Okay, Lorraine, thank you, that was excellent. Are we done with 4? Let's go 5. 5 is advertisements. One for Peg Legs, CRA Board Attorney, and Executive Director.
Yeah, I can probably keep these really simple and just tell you what you have here is the basic of advertisements that I'm working with. Depending on where it's going, some of these are getting shortened so that you're not paying $800 for an advertisement. The only action I need from any of you at all is, if you recall at the last meeting, we kind of pushed off the decision of who was going to host the informational session on Peg Legs.
On November 8th, is that right? I have that in front of me. Is that the...
Yeah, I believe I had tentatively scheduled for November 8th. It's a day that you have a regular CRA meeting, so we'll be here. So it's not a problem if you want us to do it.
Okay, this is agenda item number 5A, and it says, it's 5A, and it just, at the bottom it says, request action, the CRA board must determine the host of the November 8th, 2012 informational session. That's the only thing that we need to
I
decide.
thought we talked about that in length, and the confusion in my call is that staff hosted it and the consultant was not here.
You did have the discussion, but you pushed off the decision until
Okay,
later.
What would you like to do?
up to the board. I just know when you respond to bids or RFQs or RFIs or RFPs, that if there's not consistency, then there could be confusion, and you can have a means to, what am I trying to say? Appeal the process if you're not consistent.
My preference would be that the staff host it in order to avoid any possible implication that the city's agreed to something or offered to do something at the meeting, and that we not have any city people speak at the meeting.
When you say staff, do you mean CGA? Okay.
That way we separate the commitment. There's no possibility that
I agree with
accidentally
you. I agree with you.
obligators or something.
I would suggest, Mr. Chair, that it would be good to have Mr. Stone there, so if somebody has questions about something in particular about property in general, that,
How many
there are
hours?
things hidden.
You think 2 hours?
Probably an hour.
Now,
I would imagine
I think
something like an
since you're going to be in town, I mean, that's what I would recommend. Okay, can you guys take that? November 8th?
No problem. By the way, if you'd also notice on all these advertisements, we've set up at our offices a dedicated email address and phone line for this. The phone number that's in here, if you pick that up, you hear my voice saying you've reached the Satellite Beach CRA informational line, and that email address has been set up only for these 3 items. So any information to there will only be related to these 3 items.
These 3 guys, good. And the other ones have no action, no other
No
action
actions required, they were
on them, so we're not gonna
informational
do
for
any
you.
action. Okay.
So that's 5D.
5's gone. 6, preparation for discussion with lender, client manager, or on, do we want to do,
This is a really simple one for you.
okay, let's do simple.
You asked us to come to this meeting and talk about your swap agreement, and what we recognize is the best person to talk to you about the swap agreement is a representative of the bank. We contacted your customer manager. He could not make this meeting, but has put on his agenda for the October 11th meeting. So that's if you have any questions about the swap agreement, anything there, that's the person to ask. We put this on the agenda. If you have any specific questions you know you want to ask, let us know. We can share with him so he's prepared to answer them.
Same lender that wanted to charge me $6 today to cash one of their Bank America checks.
Oh, is it a Bank America?
Yeah, so this is
loan
Bank
too?
America.
Okay.
I have a couple of
America wants to
questions.
charge you $6 to catch one of their
$6
checks?
for one check.
One of their checks?
Yeah.
Kind of low.
I
have a couple questions. I had requested the swap agreement, and the agreement that I got back wasn't executed. I think you were all copied on it.
Yeah, what was that all about?
Do you have the documents, or do we need to make a motion for you to contact the bank directly to get what you need to review? So that
We
you
have
can
the same documents that you had posted along. I mean, I assume those are the executed documents, but again.
They're not executed.
They're signed by the city, but not by the bank.
So can we give them authorization to contact the bank to get what they need? The executed agreements for our files and for...
I don't know if we need to vote on that. I'd just go do it. I mean, we
Well,
should have those in our
They won't do it unless we
files.
authorize it. They won't do it unless we authorize it. Am I correct? I mean, my bank...
Order as a council.
Well, why don't we have the city do it?
Well, I've been requesting over and over the documents, and you got them as well. They're not executed from the city.
Well, the city signed them, the bank didn't sign them. We need the whole we need both, a document that has both signatures on it.
The odds are that it's lost.
Well, I would like to get a definitive
Yeah.
from the bank, so...
Yeah, the other thing on this loan, I don't know if anybody noticed, but it's also not a fixed rate.
Yep.
So what I'm concerned about is maybe we don't have the documents here. Why not allow them to contact the bank to get the documents directly?
We need a copy of the fully executed documents a week before the 11th. Is the bottom line.
So is that a motion? Do I need to make a motion? I mean, I just...
No, I think you just.
Well,
Why wouldn't we just have Brenda do it, and that, but we don't have to pay you guys to do it?
Well, I've been asking for it over and over and over, and I haven't gotten anything from Brenda.
And
Maybe we don't have the documents here.
can we call and try to get the,
Follow through on that.
okay,
And can we set a time?
by next meeting?
No, by the.
Next meeting is a month.
27th.
Okay.
The 27th you're talking about?
No, he's talking the 11th, the 27th. You want
Week
This is an
before the
important
meeting.
issue, so I
Week
mean...
before the meeting.
Well, when do you want, when
week.
do you need to look at them?
Well, I think it's just it's a huge, huge issue.
It is a
That's
big
just
deal.
kind of...
At least
We just need to make sure.
I've been asking for these documents
Okay.
from the city, and I haven't gotten them, so...
And do you know, you will check with
Yes, I
Brenda,
will check.
and then we need them, if possible, a week before the 11th?
Have you ever gotten any?
Yeah, I'm just trying to remember, I think it was sent by the city though.
Only
I'm
some of
not
the
sure
things.
exactly.
Right.
Would just
Ron, I
send it
emailed
there.
it to you. Did you look
Just
at
to
it?
make sure that it's done.
I mean, it's hard to do an analysis on a document that's not
Actually, signed by the
executed.
city though.
By the 4th, we're going to look. We're going to get them on probably the beginning of the next fiscal year. Is that all right, Ron? Like the 4th?
10 days.
Okay, the 1st.
And I would like the staff, our administration, if they have an issue, to allow CGA to get what they need. I mean, they can't do an analysis until you get the document.
And if the bank, on the off chance, can't find them, like they can't find the liens of other mortgage documents that have been lost, we'd like something in email, at least on a signature by the bank saying that as of that date, they've been unable to locate them. I'm going
Shouldn't it say you don't owe them anything because they can't produce the
Exactly.
Well, that's what I think we need to know. Because
That would be wonderful, wouldn't it?
there's a lot of original documents around the county that have disappeared, land documents, so.
Why wouldn't we have had that in our possession after all these years?
Why would we get involved in a loan like we did?
Well,
Well, because it was a
But why-
good deal. We saved $190,000 over 20 years.
It was not, it was a low interest rate, I think, if I remember. It
Yeah,
was
but-
not- it was,
you would think that an organization, and it's not the city, it's the CRA. The CRA should have had a copy of the fully signed and executed loan documents. I'm incredulous that we didn't have that.
I was shocked when it was emailed.
I
and
think
it
you'll
wasn't.
find, Greg, it's pretty common for the person that's going to end up with the documents not to have everything, and you sign them, you send them off, and they never send you a copy back. I see that about 80% of the time in almost all contracts I deal with.
Okay, let's just get
all
them.
right. Well,
It's not right.
So
It's not.
that is next month, and Mr. Steve Lenahan from Bank of America will be here. Thank you.
And you might want to suggest you wear a fireproof suit.
Okay, you guys got it. Okay. Agenda item number 7 is new business. I don't have anything in my package, but discuss action on funding for one page in Beachcaster to be dedicated solely to the CRA.
That was, I'll take that. That was my issue. I'd like to remove it.
Just
remove
because-
it. I'm not dealing with the Beachcaster or any kind of funding. We'll just do our own newsletter.
Okay, that's gone. Okay, thank you. Now, let me see, we need to talk about the bylaws. Jeff, you need to stay for bylaws and minutes, I think. let me see. Let's talk about the conference. Is anybody going to want to go to the conference?
I would like to
Agenda item Number 10.
Someone else wants to go.
I think it's smart.
Anyone?
I'd like to specifically recommend Tuesday at 2 o'clock, there's a session on updating your plan that I'm moderating and speaking at, so
Whoa,
please feel free to attend.
Are you going to bill
let's
us?
say it's the 23rd.
Do we have to pay your hourly rate if we go?
You do not, that's not on your back, that's a freebie I do to the FRA. And
We don't even have it starting on the 23rd when you're speaking. You speaking on Tuesday?
I'm speaking on Thursday, but I also have a
Thursday.
session. I teach a course for the FRA certification course. It's the CRA Basics. It's an 8-hour version of the 101 that I gave you all several weeks ago.
Okay.
And I do that on Tuesday. And please feel free, if you want to know a whole lot more about what I presented, to sign up for that.
On Tuesday?
On Tuesday, the 23rd.
Okay.
That's just the certification class?
Yeah,
Oh,
that's a full-day certification class on CRA Basics.
Okay, that's a full-day class, and that's the day you're
It's a full-day
recommending.
thing.
Okay.
There is an additional session on Wednesday that's designed for board members called CRA Basics. You may want to consider attending that. I think there may be an additional charge for that one. I am not involved in that one, but that is also a good one for board members or any staff that may be there to attend that and hear from that perspective. That session is generally done on a perspective of board members.
However, I do know that you're going to have to pay somebody to register someone. I don't know if you can just pop in and out. I take offense to that. So.
Didn't you say we could register one person and then change that person?
I know.
As long as two don't attend? I thought you said that the last
think that's
time.
what they did
I
last
said you
year.
could register for a single day. I would tell you, if you told the FRA you wanted to register and have different people attend different days, they might be open to that discussion. I can't commit for them, but
Well, because there's not a whole lot of big difference between the full registration and a day registration.
yeah, they really do want you to all be there.
Yeah.
Whole
Are we a member of the, I mean, I hate to say this.
Yes, you are.
Okay, so we pay dues, that was in the budget, we pay dues to them?
Can you see
Yeah,
if we
that's in
can
your
register
subscription.
one person for a full day and then decide amongst ourselves how we're going to split that up, if we are?
I think Cheryl wants to go for the whole time.
The whole 4 days? Sure.
If she
I
wants,
don't have to go for the whole 4
she wants to
days.
go 20, well.
If it's more than one day, it's worth it.
It's good for you to go 24, 25, and 26, I mean, if you want to. You spend 2 nights there, you drive up there, and then you come home. I think you get the whole flavor. There's a lot of good things, unless someone else wants to go. Ed, I know you want to, okay, so let's make a motion, please, to authorize,
Make a motion to authorize Board Member Denan to go for the entire conference.
I'll switch out.
do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, Lenore, motion by Board Member Billman, second by Board Member Rhodes.
CRA member Allison?
Yes.
CRA member Gann?
Yeah, well, yes.
Yes, you have to go.
Yes.
CRA member Campbell?
Yeah.
CRA member Lilly?
Yes.
CRA member Gilman?
Yes.
Chair Ball?
Yes, and enjoy it, and learn a lot of stuff. Thank you. And Jeff, you enjoy it. It'll be good. Okay, the next item, this is rather not lengthy, but we wanted to do the bylaw changes, agenda item number 8. And let us get to these because there are some slashes and some cuts, and I think some discussion that we want to do on this. Hold on. Oh, excuse me.
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Yes.
a lot of these changes you authorized the last time you heard them, you made the changes and just approved them subject to the changes. But when you made a change about your executive director and your officers maybe not being city staff, so what you really should point your attention to is Article 5, starting on page 4.
Okay, I think that's the one where some people want to discuss. It's, yeah, you got it. Well, Jeff, before we direct to 5, there are some changes leading up to that. Does anybody have anything on Article, there's nothing, no change to Article 1, 2, 3, there is an emergency meeting change. Anybody got anything on that one?
That was all language that you had pre-approved to be in there.
The agenda is great. I think we'll get it out to the people. That's down the bottom. There's nothing else up to 5. Okay, so let's look at 5, appointment of officers and executive director. Okay, these all say, these change from the city being involved to the CRA making, hiring the executive director and the secretary and the treasurer. And is that what we want?
I thought that's what we discussed. To separate it. Excuse me.
May I ask a question? You know, I checked with Palm Bay and Melbourne and so on, and I know that that's their choice, have the executive director as the city manager. And I understand the discussion everyone's had. The concern that we might have is, what about the city charter with the city manager being the one who hires, fires, directs staff, supervises, manages, leads, whatever you want to say? Would there be any problem with the executive, and Jeff and I briefly discussed this as a concern with, you know, our concern with the charter potentially and this type of thing, that the board then hires, supervises, etc. How about the interaction with departmental staff and so on? It is a little bit of an interesting situation. Like I say, Palm Bay, Suhan, the city manager, is the executive director, and they have hired city staff, and that was their choice, for their CRA administrator. Melbourne has 3 CRAs, and their executive director is their city manager, and they have the staff, the city staff that works for them. Do you think, is there a possibility of any conflict with the charter and the conflict of duties of the city manager, and can the city manager then direct the executive director or not? See, no. So, you know, what is that a problem?
Well, that's a Beetle question. I don't.
And he asked me that, he suggested this was the proper time to discuss that. And I also talked with someone from FRA, you know, we've talked too. And I know Jeff's going to have something important to say as well. But even FRA said, you know, there are all different varieties of CRAs and how they're set up. Executive director is one. I think most of them are the city managers. Is that true? In the state of Florida, that was what I got, but they're all over the place.
I wouldn't go out there and say that it's the city manager. I would tell you more often than not it is city staff nowadays, but I'm not going to tell you that the executive director is always the city manager.
And they did not give me any kind of percentages and so on. But again, could there be some kind of a conflict on that?
Well, the interesting is the charter has been around longer than the CRA, and I don't really foresee what was amended, but it didn't affect the CRA.
Mr. Chair, what I would suggest, and I am not an attorney. Let's say that right off the bat. I am merely suggesting something, and that if you look at statute, it specifically says the CRA is a separate, legally distinct entity.
And that's why I want a separate person, and I want there to be conflicts between the city manager and, to be honest about it, and the executive director, and those conflicts will be resolved between the boards.
That's what we're here for.
Yeah.
Okay, here's,
but I do
want there to be conflicts.
Okay.
The city manager obviously would control her own staff, and the CRA director would have to have a decent working relationship to be able to get access to that staff. But I want the city manager to have unfettered control over the city manager staff.
Okay.
And I want the CRA to truly represent the CRA, because that's where you get into trouble with these crossovers when you have a double pointed.
And I expect the city manager and the city staff to work with the CRA, since we are one city. Obviously, if there's some issues there, then both positions would be in jeopardy, one by the CRA and one by the city council. So
it says here that they'll be responsible for day-to-day administrative activities and in coordination with the CRA attorney and city departments. So are the city departments going to now have 2 bosses instead of 1? Is that what I'm reading here? In other words, who are they going to answer to?
I would say that it's not coordination of, it's coordination with. So it's their job to make sure they're working with those departments.
Coordination
departments
with.
are.
Yeah, and it's responsibility of the city manager to ensure that her staff cooperates and coordinates, just like the CRA executive director, if they have a staff, ensure their staff cooperates.
I see a big conflict there, but
the council has a few people that work for them. and I know that this isn't council activity, but it's the lawyer, the engineer, and the city manager. The only problem I saw with this, if you have somebody that works directly for you, you have to have somebody that person can ask questions in the month that you're not meeting. So are you saying that the CRA chair will be the direct liaison with this person? And are you going to give the chair, see, because if the chair says, you know, if the executive director says to the chair, hey, I want to talk to somebody about this, and if that chair talks to any one of you, that's out of sunshine. So you have, with the board only meeting once a month, I think that there is some sort of logistics problem.
How does that work with the city right now?
Well, we only have the city manager, the lawyer, and the engineer. And actually, the engineer really talks to Alan most of the time, Potter. So but I'm just saying that say there's an issue, they come up, and say the chair is the mayor. Just say it. I know we're going to talk about that. Do they ask the mayor, and then he gives the executive director direction without including all of you? I mean, that's going to be really...
Well, that's what the emergency meetings and all the other stuff are about.
Oh, well, you don't want to have an emergency meeting every time something comes up there.
That's just a classic business
and I don't
problem you get into.
It is a classic big business problem, but if you have this person working in the staff, I think it's a little easier to coordinate that stuff. We're not a strong...
Mayor.
Yes. I mean, I was going to say manager because of the board, but you're not a strong board, and you're not a strong mayor, and you have a city manager. I don't see where this executive director would come to this seat every time they need something, and this person actually would run the whole CRA board, because if they call you, if they say, hey, Lloyd, that's sunshine. And I don't know how do you avoid that. Do you always hold a meeting? Do you have more than one CRA meeting a month? You could with an executive director and your own admin.
It should work like any board of directors, and what works is you delegate the president the authority to do stuff, and the president does stuff, and if he can't get it done, then he has to hold on to it till a board meeting.
Well, I'm just saying that you're only meeting once a month, Ed. And some of that stuff I don't think you want to wait 1 month for. So you're going to be meeting many times a month.
Well, I think typically they meet twice a month.
CRA boards?
Yeah.
So is that something that you're going to
Well,
incorporate?
I'm just saying, but I mean,
you may have to do that.
Yeah.
I would suggest most that I know are meeting once a month. If you have a volume of business, you may wish to meet twice a month if you have that much to do.
But you have to be sure that you give the executive director good direction at each meeting so that they can go for a month without talking to the board.
Do you guys go for a month without talking to the board? Okay.
At any point when I'm in a situation of being an executive director of a CRA, I talk to my board all the time, all day long. When we have ongoing projects, I'm informing them everything that's going on. And I used to go to, I was running a CRA for the city of Margate a decade ago. I used to go to lunch with my chairman 3 times a week.
But
we
I'm not sure
can't talk.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a matter of the relationship you have with your executive director. They should have very clear marching orders from you of what they're doing, and they should be informing you of what they're doing.
Every chairman
there shouldn't be questions about what they're supposed to be doing.
Not every chairman has the capability to spend 3 days a week at breakfast with you.
That's
I know
incredibly unusual.
On this day I would probably be the only one that could go to lunch with you 3 days.
What I would suggest to you,
I'm buying.
If you don't, if any board member is not up to date with what the executive director is doing, then you have a problem. If your executive director is not communicating what they're doing on a regular basis beyond once a month meeting, then you don't have the right person.
I think we're okay with sunshine, correct me here, but I think we're okay with sunshine as long as if Jeff was the executive director, he told all of us at the same time what he's doing, right, with an email, as an example. Now, the sunshine issue comes in, I think, is if one of us directs him based upon that email.
Yeah, and
that's an issue.
I could just see that happening. Or, as Ed says, you give this chair or the vice and this chair, you could give the vice the authority, and they can meet Well, no, they can't be.
You'll find your way through it. You'll find an executive director that works for you and understands rules, and you will evolve your relationship as it moves forward. And that person will recognize it. Perhaps Member Billman wants to hear about every little thing that's going on when it happens.
No.
And Member Ferrante, you may want to hear just the items about a particular project when they happen. You know,
Okay.
that's the relationship any board has with its staff.
I just know, it may lead to a little bit of disconnects.
And you'll work through those issues.
I like the OCI thing, though. I like disconnecting it. And
Yeah,
I think that will make us less apt to have conflict of interest issues that we've
Well,
had.
there's a downside, but I don't think it's outweighed by the upside.
Right.
Okay.
So I would leave it as it is, as
wanted
they
to-
recommended.
Just wanted to broach it.
And we're just going to have to work it. I mean, we've had good mayors and good senior leaders here
Yeah.
historically in the city.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may as well, if you read the sections of the bylaws, it does not preclude you from having city staff working for you. What we took out was references to them absolutely being city
Yeah.
staff.
Right. And,
The only thing that it mentions about city staff is you cannot pay them directly. You would pay this, you would reimburse the city for their expense if it's a city,
Yeah.
if they're working through the city.
That's right.
And this also goes back to the fact when we were talking about a development department and
Right.
a development director, I used the word community development and it confused everybody, but you could partially pay for a planner who works part-time for the city and also works part-time for the community development.
Because the phrase used in all of these is shall be appointed, so we could appoint Ann as easily as we could appoint Ron to work for, to do something for us.
Mr. Chairman, the board had indicated that they didn't want to keep it as the city manager is the executive
Yeah.
director, the
So-
city clerk is.
So you have the option.
We took the references out to who they absolutely were. They can still be those people, but we took out the references to that they were those people.
Yeah, I think it's nicely written.
Okay, Jeff, let's go through the other slashes. Yes, go ahead.
Is it hard? Because it usually can't answer.
Go ahead, Brenda.
On the treasurer's
What, are you on a paragraph?
Page 5, Article 5.6.
5.6?
where it says custody of all operating funds of the CRA. Can you clarify that line for me?
That's going to be the person who oversees the trust fund.
Will they have a separate bank account? And be assigned on the account?
That's going to be up to the board, how that ultimately works out.
Okay, but by reference to that, being in there since they can appoint whoever, and just having that in there, have custody of operating funds of the CRA, and then if you go into the supervision of accounts, the control of the accounts of the CRA board,
I would anticipate the treasurer is one of those things we hire from the city on an hourly basis, to be honest about it. I don't think it'd be crazy to have a separate treasurer.
that, you know, an outside person now has control of
Yeah.
the funds, and then they're a signer on the account, and they have, you know, assign the funds, and now everybody's gonna look to this board and say, well, how could you do that?
Are you planning on moving out of country?
So do you think that it should be under the financial director's
We have a
purview?
lot of internal controls put in place. I'm just worried about the verbiage.
Lee, that's a good point.
It would be foolish for you to have anybody other than the city's finance director doing that for you.
You know, and that might be the one crossover that we do need to have. We might want to modify that paragraph to say the treasurer shall be the CFO for the city.
Finance director.
Now, did we put any money in the budget for a treasurer?
No.
Says just over that time.
So we did.
Does it say they work without pay?
Right, that's Xed out.
Yeah.
It's,
It says
But
that
the-
the
you know-
CRA can reimburse the city.
The finance director still reports to the city manager, so it's an interesting thing. We're really setting up a separate government here. The finance director needs to report to the executive director,
For CRA
not directly
purposes.
to us, yeah.
For CRA
Yeah.
purposes, yeah. I agree with that. But I think we could make it the CFO for the city will be the treasurer, and that in her capacity as a treasurer for the CRA shall report to the executive director.
Executive director, yeah. Is that okay?
They're all going to work together anyway, I would hope.
I just don't trust anybody with cash.
I understand.
But we're making you that person.
I'm just,
Be careful what you ask for.
a lot of these roles already in place.
Yeah, and that's why we're making that change.
However you do it, and
The only difference, though, you would be this person. The only difference would be that if the CRA director was not the city manager, you would report to that person with regard to CRA funding and the city manager with regard to city funding. That's the only difference.
The other thing I'm thinking, Brenda, if you do this in non-city time, you would be reimbursed by the CRA.
why?
Because we're hiring, if you do it in non-city time, you work only on CRA.
Actually, I don't think that's true. I think whenever she does CRA work, she would be getting paid by the CRA.
Should be reimbursed, the city would be reimbursed.
Even during city business time.
Well, we're not sure, Dale.
5.8 is where you're going to get an answer to that question. 5.8 was added. It says, except for officers who are also members of the CRA board, officers of the CRA may be compensated as the CRA board deems appropriate. However, if the CRA officers or any other individual are performing duties for the CRA as part of employment with the city, they cannot be compensated through the CRA, cannot be compensated, though the CRA may reimburse the city for the cost of services provided pursuant to any interlocal or memorandum of understanding.
So in effect, part of your salary would come out of CRA funds.
Yeah, Brenda could track her hours, and then the CRA could be billed for her hourly rate for any time she spends on CRA activities.
Depending on the interlocal agreement.
But you wouldn't be cutting a check to Brenda.
Right. No. It'd be the CRA would be paying part of her salary.
So what this says is if you appointed any city staff person to one of these roles, or used the city staff person, you'll reimburse the city for this.
Yeah, I mean, the correct word is reimbursing instead of paying.
I don't agree with that. I thought we were going to hire an administrative secretary that we were going to pay from our funds because this person is doing duty above and beyond. Why are we going to pay the city for this extra work?
If the CRA delegates that to the city to do that, let's use Lenore as an example. If you say the city clerk shall be the secretary, now she's doing this part of her job. But if you have a separate agreement with Lenore to, on her time, do your business, then she's not doing it as part of her CRA or city employment.
So when she sits down here at 5:30, Joe,
okay,
she's done with her day for the city at 5.
Are performing duties for the CRA as part of employment with the city, that, you're reading into that. Okay, I just want to make sure that.
And what about the finance director then, from 8 to 5?
That's what I was saying. What about 6 to 9 or weekends, working CRA?
Just a thought, I mean, that's an interesting point, isn't it?
And it's something.
I know how to figure it out, don't worry about it.
Okay.
Brenda's got the schedule. Remember, it's a difference between saying the finance director is the treasurer versus saying we have a treasurer and we have to use the person who is the finance director for the city. So that's the difference in pay.
I think we need to modify
What, 5.6 or
5.6 to say the treasurer shall be the finance director for the city and shall report to the executive director of the CRA.
Okay.
Well, why would you do that if you're going to have an interlocal agreement?
Because we want one person in charge of the money.
Oh, I know that, but we would still have to do an interlocal agreement between the
Right.
city and the CRA anyway.
But the CRA couldn't, and if that's in the bylaws, without amending the bylaws, the CRA couldn't say, well, we're sick of the city telling us, of the city finance person telling us what we can do with our money, we're going to get our own treasurer. Because if you don't write it that way.
What's wrong with that if you wanted to get your own treasurer in the future? What's the big deal?
If the interlocal agreement's going to specify the relationship, then there's no reason to modify 5.6.
Right.
Okay, let's press. Okay. We got 5.8 done. Anything else here, Jeff? Nothing? I don't see anything else.
The only items you have beyond that would be
5.1 we saw, and
5.1 we looked at.
I think we were okay with that, the CRA board.
Yeah, it's the interlocal agreement, Brenda, that's going to drive you as the no. I don't think, guys, right?
Oh,
So the CRA, the treasurer,
Well, The CRA board signs the interlocal agreement, right? So
The
we're
CRA.
essentially.
In the city.
The CRA appoints whoever they want.
Right.
You're
Yeah,
pretty much
so-
telling me you're going to appoint Brenda.
Yeah.
But this allows us, sometime in the future, if we decide that, that doesn't work, this allows us to get our own treasurer.
This is not an absolute.
Right. But the interlocal agreement will define her for this.
For the interlocal, you'll appoint Brenda as that person and will authorize the reimbursement of her time and.
And what actually, it looks like it was struck from the paragraph, so we must have discussed it before.
There's always the rare possibility that the property values will skyrocket and the CRA will be flush with cash and we'll want to have our own treasurer controlling it because it's just too much to handle for one person.
All right, I'm going to put this to bed. Any public comment on this?
Then it gets back to my original question, is there a separate bank account? Take down the future, if I am not this meeting as the treasurer,
I would assume there is a separate trust account for the CRA money.
Otherwise you're commingling funds.
Yeah, and that,
It's supposed to be set up in a trust.
I would,
I mean, say,
Brenda,
called
tell me
it,
if I'm not incorrect, or if I'm correct here. Most cities, the way they'll set it up is it's set up internally as a separate fund, but it's still part of it. Part of the major of the bank accounts that the city's holding. But internally, in your computer system, it's identified as redevelopment trust fund. That money's in the redevelopment trust fund, doesn't go anywhere else. There's nothing that says you couldn't continue that through this.
right, the way it's now, has currently the operation of the CRA.
I would say you're doing that right now.
but what Brenda's saying is if we do pick a treasurer who's not her at some point, how does that mechanism work? Because then that person would have to get access to the city.
well, then the CRA would have
And I
to
would
set up
suggest
some,
at that time, then you would open a.
then we would open a separate bank account and deposit the checks from the city and the county
I
in there.
would tell you and tell the public to be on the watch if the CRA board ever appoints someone else, unless it's an employee. There are several CRAs that have enough income that they have a finance director of their own. But I would not imagine you're ever going to get to that point.
I think you're right.
Okay, agenda item number 5B, any public comments? We're going to approve. Okay, let me bring these back for, because it's,
I can make a motion that we approve the bylaws, the changes to the CRA bylaws as presented, and I don't think we made any modifications.
Second.
okay, I have a motion by Board Member Billman, second by Board Member Kinberg. Lenore?
CRA member Allison?
Yes.
CRA member Dean?
Yes.
CRA member French?
Yes.
CRA member Rose?
Yes.
CRA member Pembroke?
Yes.
CRA member Bowman?
Yes.
Chair Geraldo.
Yes, and that motion passes. Thank you unanimously. The last thing I'd like to do with Jeff and Lorraine here are the minutes. Agenda item number 12, and then I want to go back to facade grants, finally, and any board comments. So let's look at the minutes from June 27th and August 9th.
Is it okay if I sign the particular water bill?
No, go ahead.
Actually, I have some corrections to June 27th today.
Okay, that's the first one.
You
we
want
look at?
us to wait, Ed? No. Okay.
Can we make pen and ink changes? Are they going to be pen and ink changes?
No.
No?
On page 4, I'm going to recommend, let's see. Not on page 4. On page 5,
Okay.
let me see if these are still the same. Actually, the minutes have changed since the original minutes because mine are not matching up. I guess I'll do this way, from 1 hour and 40 minutes to 1 hour and 50 minutes, 53 minutes, I would like them done verbatim. 1 hour, 40 minutes to 1 hour, I listened to the entire tape, by the way, the entire 4 hours. I'm on page 5, but it,
Oh, it's changed.
so from approximately, after the citizens comment, where it says a board member, actually, am I right?
Are you June 27th?
It looks like the minutes have changed since they were originally presented to us. They don't match with what's here.
You were asked to have us review the audio and go back. I had volunteer Pat Sam to listen to all of the sections that you identified. And
I thought you asked me to come back with the changes at this meeting. that not correct? I thought we talked about just doing a quick, for the future minutes, just doing a quick synopsis or
We are.
whatever?
These are the last that we will get in.
Okay, so what I did is I took the old minutes and I listened to the entire 4-hour tape because I think you said it was my responsibility to go back and determine where the errors were. So I went back and listened to the entire 4-hour tape, and what I would like is from, it is still on page 5,
Okay.
but from a board member, which is about 1 hour and 40 minutes of the tape, to 1 hour and 53 minutes, I would like that done verbatim.
How much time?
13 minutes.
13 minutes. And
Rather
a lot of it
than
is
just
there.
that paragraph?
Yeah, a lot of it is there, but I couldn't write it all out and tell it to you. I couldn't keep up with it.
Well, you have access to those 13 minutes. If they were 18 minutes, I would understand it.
18 minutes have disappeared.
Oh, man. Not a lot of people do that. You're old enough. Yeah.
And then on page 6, where the board had the following discussion, I don't see any changes there. And so from 1 hour and 59 minutes to 2 hours 21 minutes, I think there needs to be some additions there.
I would just like to say that that is an awful lot of work for whoever has to do it.
Can I ask you a question though? What does the computer do that it does there? Does it pretty much, is it typing out what we're saying, Lenore?
No, I have to type everything.
But I just went back per your direction and listened to 4 hours of tape to make these corrections. And this is the last time we will be doing minutes like this. And I would like what I said on the record.
Can you just say what it is that you want on the record?
No,
That-
because it is so vague and it was so important that none of it went in there. And I'm not asking
Do you
for
have,
the
do you
moon and
have
stars.
key points? That's what I'm asking. Do you have some key points that we can put in here that would?
Lloyd, I listened to 4 hours of tape.
Well, would it be appropriate since future, in fact, probably starting tonight, we're going with the timing of the tape and then putting in just
We've already
the...
talked about doing that for future meetings.
Right,
For
right,
this
right.
meeting, I documented a lot of things in the record that are not in
Well,
these
but what I'm
minutes.
saying is it's on the record if it's on the tape. So would it be appropriate if we put the time of the tape, the issues that you have, note those times on these written minutes, and because it's on the tape, it is on the record.
That would be a good compromise, because then people would know exactly where to go to look in the recording, and they could listen to the verbatim. We could just say in here that...
There was a time when you wanted something you wanted clarified, and I really put some things in the record during those time frames that I want clarified in these minutes. I'm not asking for the whole 4 hours to be done verbatim. I listened to it, and I would like those time frames put in verbatim on this.
Just those two time
Just
frames,
those
sure.
2 time frames.
What are the time frames again? 13 minutes and what else?
140 to 153,
Yeah. What's the other one? 15 something?
and 159 to 231. And like I said, a lot of it is in there already. It's just a lot of the points are not in there, like the exact number that was spent for police and fire is not in this. I mean, that's very important, the 4.2 million. These are questions you guys also asked that need to be put in these minutes. And the overall money that came in, that was about 12 million, that's not in the minutes. And I think it's important when someone picks up these minutes that they understand what they were. And I took 4 hours to go through them, and I would appreciate it, because that's the direction you gave me at the last meeting, that information be put in the minutes.
Well, we still got a couple of weeks to balance off to burn up our old money. Why don't we just authorize the city manager to hire someone at the market rate to transcribe those pieces of the tape? I mean, we're talking probably about $200 to do this at the most. That's probably high. If that much. I don't know what the going rate is, but let the city manager use her discretion to hire a temp person to come in, or a service to transcribe those portions of the tape.
I have a second on that.
Okay, it's a motion. A second. Is that okay?
Lenore, may I ask you? Okay,
Allison.
Allison, Lenore, can I ask you a question? Is it possible if we did hire someone that they would be able to review this information? Okay, I understand. Okay, Ian, we have a discussion for you to pay someone to transpose or to include these minutes in. Do you think that's possible for you to do? I asked Lenore, she says it's on the machine,
Yes, I think I can work something out.
and then you will bill the CRA.
I'd be happy to bill the CRA.
Okay. And then I think the CRA will pay this person directly.
Is that one of these?
Sort of.
Dave,
I'm sorry.
I didn't know that you were Italian.
Where they can have a print in your arm.
Right.
So you're asking to hire somebody to transcribe 33 minutes of tape? That's fine.
Okay, Lenore.
Well, let's see, it's a little more than that.
Yeah, it's 33 minutes, but that's,
It's
well,
more than that.
some people can try to do
2
90
plus
words a
3.
minute. I mean, we're doing, Lenore, we got a motion.
CRA member Billman,
Yes.
Be fine.
CRA member Dan,
Yes?
CRA member Frank,
Yes.
CRA member Rhodes,
Yes.
CRA member Allison,
Yes.
CRA member Kendall,
Yes.
Chair Bronte.
Yes, thank you. Can we look at the August 9th minutes, please? Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the Community Redevelopment Agency Board minutes for August 9th, 2012 as written.
Second. I have a motion by Board Member Rhodes, second by Board Member French. Lenore?
CRA member Allison,
Yes.
CRA member Billman,
Yes.
CRA member Dan,
Yes.
CRA member Kendall,
Yes.
CRA member French,
Yes.
CRA member Rhodes,
Yes.
Chair Bronte.
Yes, thank you, Lenore. At this time, I'd like to say thank you very much, Jeff and Lorraine. Have a safe trip home. I wish you were dropping me off at exit 60, Hyperluxo, but that's not going to work. I'm sorry.
Thank you all very much.
We'll see you on the 11th. We'll see you on the 11th. Okay, the last things that we have, John, you're up. 2 facade grants, sir, sorry. Now, Brenda is not here.
No, she's not.
Okay. Any motions that we would make would be contingent about the funds being available in this budget.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's just the way. Hey, John, can you wrap up, I'm sorry.
I will speak twice as fast as I can.
Okay, no, I don't mean wrap up, but you want to do the facade grants? We'll handle them, and then we'll go right into site plan.
We have 3 of them, don't we?
Well, we got 2 facade grants and a site plan.
Oh, the other one's a site plan, it's not, they're not asking for
One
money.
of the applicants is, yeah, one of the applicants is no longer here.
Okay, John, what do we got?
All right. The first application for facade grant, let me get to my page here. I'm going to include a revised sheet here, and I'll explain that in just a second.
Is that 11?
It is, yes. 11A, but I'm looking at my copies right now.
Can we ask if there's money in the budget for this before we proceed?
We're gonna, if we approve it, it's gonna be contingent upon the money being available in the 11-12 budget.
What's the point if we don't have the money?
Brenda's not here, I don't have anybody here that knows. She just asked.
Which one are we talking?
I tried to get the notes out.
Okay.
Old pizza.
These are just the revisions and the sheet you already have in here, and we'll discuss those in just a second.
Notice it doesn't give me them.
John, what are they building at the, what's going on at the Shell station?
Ball station?
Should.
Shell.
Shell station.
The filling station on Roosevelt, yeah.
They're replacing tanks that were taken out of service, so they're putting new tanks in, and they're actively working on trying to get it to the end of the tank.
There's no lieutenant yet.
They said that they have one on the book, but they don't have one.
Okay, so this is just an owner upgrade, not an operator.
Yeah, because the ad department actually took it out because it was a single wall tanks. So they had to remove.
John, can we do this?
Yes.
Sorry, Ed.
Gotta drive past that thing.
Okay.
The applicant Real Estate Brevard, represented by Neil Spurlock and his son Zach over there. They're the new owners,
of the old Pizza Hut, and which is located at 1180 Highway A1A. They're proposing to do several upgrades to include landscaping, a new porta-vernacular style raised standing seam roof, seal coat and stripe the parking lot, some enhanced landscaping, and painting the building. There's a binder, I think, Lenore, you have it over there, this a full binder of all the estimates. They got 3 estimates for each one of these projects that are broken down to you in this summary. What I've included in the package is the lowest bids. So those, I assume, would be the numbers you guys would be working off of. Now, typically when we look at these grants, to give an example with a roof, we look at the cost of that roof, and we try to determine about how many sides are actually visible from the CRA. So in the case of the Pizza Hut, I look at that roof as something that is looked at from, or viewed from 3 sides. There's the east elevation and north and south, and you don't see the back. So we wouldn't typically pay for the back side of that roof. So I look at that as 75% of the value of that roof is something that could qualify as a part of that grant. And then it would be on a 50-50 match from there. So when I went back with Mr. Spurlock here towards the end of the day, we went and looked at those numbers again a little bit closer, and that's what you have in that revised summary there, where, like landscaping, for instance, if you look at in the attachment, all the landscaping is 100% out there in the right-of-way. And also I had them also break out where one of those, part of that quote had included a pump and irrigation, which is typically not something we would pay for. So he had grouped into that $2,400 part of the landscape. So I asked him to break that out, and then I looked at those numbers again. So again, that revised summary sheet is a little bit more accurate depiction of those costs and what portions that we would typically pay for. So based on that revised one there, the new amount would have been, this again is at those percentages, and then at 50% comes out to $13,829.88. That would be what the applicant is requesting.
Okay, John, thank you. Let me bring it back to the board. Any comments, questions?
What's the building going to be when it's done?
That's one of my questions.
A real estate office? Okay.
What prevents someone from taking one of these grants and flipping the place in a year and walking away with profit?
Actually, there used to be, when we gave a grant, you got a lien.
5-year lien.
5-year lien. Dave, I don't know if you were a recipient of the 5-year lien, but then we said that wasn't good business. So there is actually, there may be a commitment. I don't think there's a 5-year lien.
No, that was removed. I think Bunky's was the last one. It was part of that lien process.
Aren't you supposed to maintain it?
There's no lien, but there's a requirement that they'll maintain it for 5 years.
No, I don't think there's a commitment, and I think you can flip it. I think it is a gesture of the board and the company to make it look nice.
Yeah. That's about the bottom line is the building's still going to look nice, except maybe the landscaping will go down the hill if they left us.
Yeah, I believe if you
the sun looks young. Are you healthy? You guys healthy? Got a doctor's note?
Mr. Spurlock had renovated a building, well, his current location, actually up Merritt Island, and had received one of these grants and did a very good job with it. So he's familiar with the grant process and
How long have you been in your building up in Merritt Island?
7 years.
Is this going to be your building, your office, your real estate company?
Yes. I live off Bassett, so I'm looking forward to not driving Merritt Island every day.
I'm not a big fan of these things, but that building has been a derelict building for the 15 years that I've lived here. It's never going to make it as a restaurant. I don't even know if it could be converted into a restaurant without a huge expense. And if these guys are putting the money in to convert the interior of that thing into it and give us a decent-looking building on A1A, I'm going to make an exception to my normal dislike, and
Okay, can we have a motion?
also move.
I had a quick question.
Reluctantly move.
It's been a couple of years since I was on the CRA Advisory Board. We were stuck with the someone asked me a couple of days ago about it. The Sherwin-Williams brand paint was the only thing approved by the CRA. Did we change that?
Well, no, that's really not correct. What it is we use, the CRA used Sherwin-Williams as their color palette. So they basically had references to the SW number, the Sherwin-Williams number. But the message, and Ms. Spurlock will attest to this, the message that we put out there is you do not have to use Sherwin-Williams. You have to use an equivalent color to that.
We can use Ace or Richard's Paint from South Patrick Hardware.
We do not have a preferred brand. It's, we have a preferred color.
That is the right answer. Very good.
And I hear it's so moved, but can you put the amount in there?
13,829, John, that's half of the.
Yes, it is.
That we approve a grant, facade grant, in the amount of 13,829.88 to be coming out of 2011-2012 funds.
Contingent upon.
Contingent
upon
availability of funds.
Now, all this work has to be done in order to get the matching funds, right?
Yeah, let me explain the process on that. Typically what happens is once the grant is approved, they begin their work on it. They hire their contractors. After all the work is said and done, we go out and we inspect the work, verify it's completed. They have to turn in us the final paid invoices from all those contractors. And from those final invoices, we submit them to finance, and that's where the check is cut to reimburse them for that work that's been already paid in full by
Do we
the
require a final release of lien also be provided from the vendor that provided the service?
Anyone that, we certainly could require that on, because any time that project is over $5,000, they're required to file that notice of
Are
commencement.
you going to have a general contractor do this whole thing, or are you going to do it in pieces? One contractor? Okay. So the general contractor needs to be responsible.
Yeah, no, I might add that Mr. Spurlock is the general contractor.
Oh, you are? Okay. Okay. So you know all about the leases. I mean, they're not the routine things, but.
Lenore, we're ready for a vote.
Well, I had one more
Yes,
question.
One more question.
This 13,829.88, is that the maximum amount that we're going to reimburse, or is that just a?
That is the maximum amount reimbursed. They're paid off the actual invoice. So if it came in less than that, then that's what we would pay. We can go up to 15, but we are at that.
So Mr. Spurlock will pick the vendor that he wants, and then based on the low bid, we'll pay one half of the low bid, I guess is how it works out.
Right.
We're paying the, yeah.
I would just like to say one thing before the vote, and I wish you all well, and thank you for doing what you're doing. You're going to make that area look a lot better than it is. But I think everybody knows my fundamental issue with grants. It's government picking winners and losers. Yeah, they came to us and they asked us, and other people could come to us and ask us too, but I don't think government has any business helping business. It's businesses' business to make their businesses look good so people want to come in and
I agree with you. That's why.
That's where I am.
It's reluctant, but
just so you know, that's where I am. But
I'd like
good
to
luck
see-
and thank you for coming in and doing it. But that's just me.
But
I have
Mr.
to-
Billman, you can go in there and you can point at them and say, you didn't build that.
Lenore, we have a motion and a second.
But they did build it. They are building it. That's the issue.
Well.
That's the issue that's why I don't agree with grants, because it's business building business. It's not government building business.
I don't agree with you either. If we weren't wrapping it up this year, and if it wasn't such a distressed piece of property, I wouldn't support it. But that's a horribly distressed piece
I'm
of
with
property.
you. Thank you for doing what you're doing. That's all I'm saying.
Allison?
Yes.
No.
I thought you seconded the motion.
Yes.
Member French?
No.
CRA member Hood?
Yes.
CRA member Kemper?
Yes.
Chair Collins?
Yes, and the motion passes 4-2.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
All right.
I just have to stay on principle.
Looking forward to seeing your renovated building.
Sean, next one.
It's going to be massive.
The next one is for complete Aaron Heat, which is on South Patrick. The applicant was here and is no longer here. That's at 1395 South Patrick Drive. They've already completed over $20,000 worth of refurbishment to that property. I think we all have seen some of the dramatic changes to it. One of the last couple things that they're still working on is they're still working on their landscaping, but they've came to us looking for some assistance on doing the seal coat and striping. We really get a lot of value out of that. It just really makes the property pop. The low estimate is $840. In this case, it's 100% viewable from the CRA, so it would be 50% of that $840. That would be $420.
John, you're only asking for $420?
They've already, by the time they got around to the grant, they kept moving forward. They originally were wanting to do more, but they didn't want to hold up the project.
I thought they were asking for more than that.
He's asking for more than that.
Oh, I'm sorry, wait a minute, there is one.
It's like 2,000 or something.
Excuse me. They also have
30,
50.
No.
No.
There was two items. The other one was the $3,250. That's for the refurbishment of those pump islands and the front porch areas. That estimate should be.
Oh, the Terrell?
I think it's. Give me 1 second here. I think it's a Palm Shores. Yes.
John, 2045 is the total.
Yeah, it's on.
Yes, 2045.
Okay, let's bring it back.
50%.
Any comments?
No, I think he's done such a good job improving that building for, what does he want, $2,000?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a no-brainer. I think we should give it to him. What's that?
Let's have a motion.
I'll make a motion, we give it to him.
Okay, $2045. Do I have a second?
Contingent upon it being in the budget.
Yeah. Yes. Contingent upon availability of funds. Right, David? Is that okay?
Yes. I'll second the motion.
Okay, a motion by Board Member Allison, second by Board Member Rhodes. Lenore?
CRA member Billman?
No.
CRA member Dan?
Yes.
CRA member French?
No.
CRA member Kendall?
Yes.
CRA member Rhodes?
Yes.
CRA member Allison?
Yes.
Chair Guanxi?
Yes, and the motion passes 4-2.
And I would like to also have the city express our thanks for the work they've voluntarily done on that property. They've done a beautiful job on it, and I think it's good. I'd like to pass on our recognition.
And I just want to clarify that I believe that CRAs have value when the funds are applied for the benefit of the entire community. All right? There are those who would look at repairing businesses and the appearance as benefiting the entire community. But I think that the benefit should be a use benefit versus just a visual benefit. And so I would support spending CRA money to fix sidewalks and drainage and things like that. But I just have a fundamental problem seeing city treasurer, and please pardon my use of this term, going into the pockets of private owners. But the benefit is here for you. I mean, it's there, and I don't fault you for taking advantage of it. I mean, if they said, the government said, okay, we're going to give you a tax incentive, all right, and it's going to come in the mail. You don't have to do anything, all right. Well, guess what? I took the money just like everybody else who got a check in the mail. But again, I would prefer to see everyone's tax dollars spent on everyone, all right, for everyone's enjoyment. That's all I have to say.
Lenore, I gave you bad input on the count vote. I said 4-2. I meant 5-2 on both of those. I forgot there were 7 of us. I thought there were 6 of us.
I want to kind of semi-second Laura's comments. No, go ahead.
Let's just press.
I just wanted to semi-second Laura's comments, but I think when you face a building that is on the downhill slide, like what those buildings were, they would have eventually been abandoned, and our cost for taking care of those buildings would have been significantly more. So that to me is a little bit of an exception when you have a building that's just ready to be abandoned.
You'll have a chance to add that. John, let's do the site plan.
Joe, on the site plan, I want to recuse myself from that one. The contractor that's proposed is a friend and a client occasionally.
Okay.
And so I don't want any appearance that I'm supporting the site plan or not supporting it. Definitely not supporting it because then I'll get in trouble.
Okay. John, there'll be 6 voting.
The last item is a site plan for 1215 Highway A1A. It is a small addition, 678 square feet, expansion of the existing reception area, and it's already been vetted through the Planning and Zoning Advisory Board, city engineers, staff, fire and police, and now it's going to the CRA. The applicant is Jane from Allegiance Contracting, and I believe she's got a sample rendering of what the architectural design is going to be. Essentially what they're going to be doing is integrating this new little bump out into to the existing facade that's already there.
I don't know. Because it's in the CRA?
Why does the CRA need to approve this? I think it's great, but why do we need to approve this?
I believe we got some language in our ordinance that said any changes to the exterior facade in the CRA has to go, I think, to the CRA staff. And right now, your staff.
No, I agree. Whatever, make a motion to approve, but I think you really need to reevaluate. I don't think projects this small should be coming forward to us.
I think it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
She's making it nicer.
Yeah.
Folks are making it nicer.
It takes her time, too.
Yeah.
You lose a couple of days of...
I make a motion that we approve the site plan for all those beach.
Okay, second, we have a motion by by Board Member Dean, second by Board Member Billman, to approve Los Alas Beach Club site plan. Lenore?
CRA member Allison?
Jane, you didn't
Approve.
say anything.
CRA member French?
Yes.
Sorry, you
CRA member Rose?
Yes.
CRA member Billman?
Yes.
CRA member Kendall?
I'm recused from this one.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Chair Ferrante?
Yes, and that passes 6-0. Thank you very much, and thanks for staying at the meeting.
Thank you, Jane.
Okay, I have 2 things for the CRA Board. One, well, we can do council. John, thank you very much.
Thanks, sir.
For spending the time with us. Any board member comments?
I have some. I remember I guess there was an issue with the trash on the Peg Legs property.
Yes.
It wasn't cleaned up. It didn't take a team of football players. It took me, myself, and I 20 minutes to clean it up. It was less than half a garbage bag out there. So I just wanted to let you know that was a little bit embellished and a little bit exaggerated regarding the trash.
Just to build on what Cheryl said, I went by and walked around that property day or two afterwards, and I couldn't even find any trash to clean up.
And thank you for that. Okay.
So it was no big deal. A couple things. I was just curious, we had talked, Hunt Pinnacle had, I guess, dedicated $75,000 towards a mast arm in the CRA. Where did that money go, and has there been any contact with Hunt Pinnacle regarding?
Mast arm, that project was abandoned.
But they still we have $75,000 in our budget that came from Hunt Pinnacle.
Is it, because I know we have 9 in the CRA.
And where we stood with it last, in lieu of doing a mast arm, we were going to go back and talk about doing some decorative pavers or something in the CRA and contributing that money towards that project.
I think we were going to use it at that intersection.
Yeah, somewhere at that intersection, we were going to do something.
Wasn't that at Shearwater?
Shearwater, yes.
Shearwater,
Yes.
yeah.
Shearwater and
But it was
A1A.
Hunt Pinnacle that had contributed
Yeah, well,
$75,000.
all I know, and I don't think it's there now, is there was $175K that was designated and done back, I believe, and I have to look at the other budget. I believe that was because it was not being done. I don't think there was any money for us at all on it. No money exchanged hands, but the project was going to be done. But if that was before my time, but it seems like it was discussed that somebody, maybe it was city council at the time acting as the CRA board, chose not to do the project. There
Could
was
you
an
just
issue on the
take
master.
a note?
But I will check
Could you just
into
take-
that.
take a
We
note?
chose not to do the master arm because we weren't doing them throughout the city, but we
Right.
were going to go back to Hunt Pinnacle about the contribution and try to figure out what to
About
do
the
with that
70
money.
And there was 75K?
I'm pretty sure it was 75.
75K, because the master arm was 150.
Okay.
Yeah, 75
I'll
us,
check on that.
75 them.
And then
Okay, and you can
From
just-
Hunt Pinnacle.
I am also concerned too, I know that the landscaping on South Patrick Drive is going to start on Monday. I'm concerned because that money went into the CRA fund, and I'm not really sure it's a CRA project. So we probably need to put that on as an agenda item and discuss it, because the DOT is going to maintain that landscaping for 2 years, and then it's going to be our responsibility.
Correct.
And so is it going to be a CRA responsibility, or is it going to be a city responsibility, because the city has maintained the right-of-ways all along? So we need to start working on that. And was there ever, have we ever figured out what the statute of limitations is on the Sunrise property? Because that was a question you had.
I don't know, the fraud person I contacted hasn't gotten back to me, and I don't have an answer.
I've given you information to check with Jim Beadle on that?
Yeah,
And you,
I sent him an email, I believe, but I may not.
so you didn't connect them, the two of you? on
No,
that?
but I will
Oh.
do that before the next meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
That will be done before the next meeting.
And one other item, I think that we need to, whether it's CGA or the staff, start working on that, on our local agreement between the CRA and the staff, because this is going to happen quickly. Before you know it, it's going to be Christmas, and we're going to have a new director or whatever we plan on doing, and we're going to need to start working on that in our local agreement. And that's it.
Any other board comments? Dave, you got something? Anybody?
No comments.
The only thing I have, I will not be here on the 27th of September for the budget, so I will leave it with the vice board chair. Is that okay? Okay, sure. And I'll see everyone on the 11th. I'm sorry.
We are meeting on the 27th, though, right?
Yes, you are meeting on the 27th at 6 o'clock
As the CRA.
as the CRA, just for wrap up 2011-2012 budget.
Is CGA going to be here?
CGA, I do not think will be here.
And that's the only
It should be a
item,
quick meeting.
that's the only item on the agenda?
Budget amendment,
It's a budget amendment.
Second reading?
budget amendment.
No, it's not a second reading, you just,
It's just a budget amendment for fiscal year 11-12.
does anybody have anything else? Thank you very much. Meeting's adjourned.
You know, Laura,
I go back, check
I
the cookies before the store closes.
Oh, 10 o'clock.
Pretend it won't read.